Holy shit, James.
Abbott practically crashes into him when they land back on the ground, slapping his back as Alice comes from behind and messes up his hair.
I've never seen anyone fly like that. We're going to destroy Ravenclaw.
You did good, kid.
Alice smiles, the rest of the team landing around them. James just grins, big and toothy, a little breathless from the flight. Sirius rolls up beside him, knocking their shoulders together.
I give you a 6 out of 10. Not enough showmanship for my taste.
He winks.
You're enough of a showman for the rest of us, Black.
Frank pushes his goggles to the top of his head.
Right, team, I'm feeling good about that practice. McDonald, tighten up your passes. Abbott, you still need to work on not projecting your blocks. And Potter?
Yes, sir.
James brings his hand up to his forehead in a mock salute. The older boy ignores him.
Fly like that on Saturday, I'll take back everything bad I've ever said about you.
Wait, what have you...
Hit showers, everybody. I expect you back on this pitch at 6 tomorrow morning.
But what have you said?
The team disperses, Frank walking away like James isn't very clearly speaking to him.
Alice?
He turns to the older girl pleadingly, but she only smiles.
Sorry, James. My lips are sealed.
Oh, really? Because that's not what I... Ow!
Mary smacks the back of his head on her way to the locker room.
Merlin.
Sirius stares after her, rubbing the back of his head.
I love that woman.
James pats his friend on the back.
She's out of your league, mate.
Don't I know it?
Oi, Black.
They both turn towards Mary, who is currently leaning against the entrance to the field, crooking her finger in a come-hither motion.
Think she means me?
Sirius elbows him in the side.
I'll catch you later, yeah?
Sirius jogs backwards towards her.
You better not be late, you prat. We have a party to prepare for.
Sirius grins cheekily.
Yes, mum.
James rolls his eyes, smiling despite himself, heading towards the locker room.
Wanker.
You seem in high spirits.
James looks surprised to find Marlene falling into step with him.
It was a good practice.
He shrugs.
Uh-huh.
James arches his brow.
Why do you look like you're plotting my death, McKinnon?
I just feel like you've been awfully chipper these last few days.
I'm a very upbeat person. It's one of my many excellent qualities.
One might even say you're glowing.
I do have great skin.
Marlene punches him in the arm.
I'm gonna figure it out, you know.
Figure it out? You mean the secret to my great skin? Sorry, but that's all genetics, baby.
But Marlene is not deterred, eyes wide and bright the way they get when she spots the snitch.
She's not in Gryffindor. I know that much.
James runs a hand through his sweaty hair.
Marlene, I told you. There's no girl.
Sure there isn't.
Marlene.
James.
He shakes his head.
You're a menace, you know that.
Pretty sure that's a compliment coming from you.
He can't help but grin.
It is.
You know,
Marlene leans into him, a strand of hair slipping out from behind her ear.
you could also just tell me, seeing as we're mates.
For some reason that hits too close to home. His eyes going briefly back to the spot where his best friend is still talking to his girlfriend. He does want to tell them, his mates. It would help, he thinks. Help it feel real. But he still isn't entirely sure that he didn't make it all up. Because it's mad, him and Regulus. Brilliant, but mad. James swallows with difficulty.
There's nothing to tell, Ma.
She looks over at him in a way that makes him feel exposed.
If you say so.
James loves parties. He knows for some people they're too much. The crowds, the noise, but he loves it. Every part of it. He loves the start, when everything is set up and he can't sit still, thrumming with adrenaline in the beginning of a buzz, wondering what kind of night it's going to be. He loves it when the first people arrive and everything is calm and quiet. He loves it in the middle, when you can barely move and you're a bit too drunk and everything is so sweaty that it's blurring together, like the world is painted in watercolours. He loves the end, when you can't tell if it's the exhaustion or the alcohol that's making you fuzzy, the sky slowly growing brighter.
Oi, Pete, turn it up!
Sirius has squashed himself between James and Remus. It's just starting to transition to that middle period, the room packed and everyone tipsy. James tilts his condensation-covered bottle back into his mouth, feeling the satisfying burn as it runs down his throat.
Oh, don't tell him to touch my record player.
Remus strains his neck in an attempt to see through the crowd that separates him from his music.
It'll be fine.
Sirius waves his hand dismissively.
Oh, will it? Do you not remember what happened last time?
Oh god, didn't he set it on fire?
Beer comes out of James's nose.
I forgot about that.
Remus doesn't look particularly happy with either of them.
Thank God Lily was there to put the bloody thing out.
James still feels his heart hit a little at the mention of her name, but it's not like it used to be.
Ah, yes.
Sirius takes a fairly substantial gulp of his drink. His eyes have started to go a bit hazy.
Where is the fair lady of Gryffindor?
James shrugs.
Dunno. Haven't seen her in ages.
He feels, as much as he sees, his two friends turn towards him. He stares back blankly.
What?
There's another beat of silence before Remus seems to shake himself awake.
Nothing, just... well, usually, you know.
I know.
Where Lily is. Every minute of every day. I used to wonder if you'd put a tracking spell on her.
James rolls his eyes.
You're being dramatic.
Well...
Oh, okay, the both of you can fuck right off then.
Sirius reaches over and messes up James's hair.
Oh, don't get all sulky on us. We're proud of you. Now,
He surveys the crowd.
we just have to find you a new girl.
Something heavy fills the pit of James's stomach. He's trying not to think about Regulus's eyes, or his hands, or Merlin, his mouth.
Who'd you fancy?
James's hands tighten around his bottle.
What?
Sirius elbows him.
Come on, Prongs. Good selection here tonight.
Sirius ignores Remus, but he's clearly bothered by it. James wonders when that started happening. When did Sirius stop finding Remus's disapproval funny?
Oh! What about Marlene? She's been flirting with you loads recently.
James tries not to laugh.
Marlene's a mate. And no, she hasn't.
You can snog a mate.
This makes Remus stiffen beside him.
Besides, you two looked very cozy this morning.
James arches his brow.
Cozy. Standing in the middle of the Quidditch pitch at 7 in the morning after practice.
Sirius squints at him.
You're very picky. Anyone ever tell you that?
And then before James can say another word, Sirius is poking Remus.
Oi, Mooney, you know where Marlene is?
I am so not involved in this.
Yeah, but you can see her though.
Remus looks at him as though he's completely lost it.
You do realise we're sitting in the exact same spot, so whatever you can see, I can see.
Apparently Sirius thinks Remus is being terribly thick, and James has to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing.
Oh, yes. But you see, I'm drunk, and my eyesight is generally shit anyway. Meanwhile, you
Sirius leans into Remus, smiling dopily.
have those beautiful big peepers to look out of.
Remus's face goes beet red, eyes hopping from Sirius to James, looking slightly panicked.
Thanks. I guess... Oh, Sirius, could you please support your own body weight? You're crushing me.
Rolling his eyes, Sirius complies, pulling back and leaning against the wall behind them.
Will you look, Remus? For me, and for James, so I can get him laid?
I don't need your help getting laid. And I'm also not going to shag Marlene.
But Sirius isn't looking at him. Instead, he's busy making eyes at Remus, batting his lashes like the coquette that he is.
Please, Mooney.
There are a few tense moments of silence.
God. Alright. Sure, I'll look around.
Oh, come on, Mooney.
James gets to his feet so he can see more than a sea of legs.
I can't believe you're actually doing this.
Calm down, James. I'm just looking.
Remus starts scanning the room.
I'm not going to help him with anything else.
Fucking traitor.
Sirius turns to him and sticks out his tongue.
Listen, Pads, I don't... Oh.
Remus's "oh" has both James and Sirius looking up.
What is it?
Remus all but falls back to the ground. He downs his drink.
Nothing. Or... I don't know. Maybe it'll be something later when we're all less Sirius, don't!
Remus's hand shoots out and grabs hold of Sirius's wrist, tugging him back to the ground as he tries to stand.
Damn moons!
Sirius crashes into the floor. If James had thought Remus looked panicked before, it was nothing compared to now.
I just don't think you're in the right frame of mind to handle this.
Sirius arches his brow.
Me? This has to do with me specifically?
Remus bites his lower lip, not saying anything else, but also not letting go of Sirius's wrist.
Okay. I gotta see this.
James...
But Remus can't hold them both down at the same time, and he seems pretty reluctant to let Sirius go. James struggles to concentrate on the sea of faces in front of him, eyes bouncing from one person to the next, trying to figure out what the hell could have spooked Remus so bad. But nothing stands out. It's a normal party, there's...
Holy shit.
He looks down and meets Remus's wide eyes.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Remus nods reluctantly.
my thoughts exactly.
Okay, you two.
Sirius has started to try and tug himself free of Remus's grip, which appears to be surprisingly strong.
This has been cute and all, but I'd really love to know what the heck is going on.
Well...
James...
Oh, come on, Mooney. You're not going to be able to stop him from finding out about this.
James looks back across the room to where Mary MacDonald is currently snogging the living daylights out of a fourth year named Connor Davies.
No one else seems to be panicking, so it can't be that bad.
Sirius is trying and failing to shake Remus off.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not terrible.
James!
What? It's true.
Prongs?
Sirius collapses back against the wall, apparently giving up on escaping Remus's hold. James runs a hand over his sweaty face, looking down at his friend.
Listen, mate. I'm really sorry.
Remus opens his mouth to interrupt, but then seems to think better of it, and instead just tightens his grip on Sirius's arm. James reckons that's probably a good idea. The last thing they need is to have to find a place to bury Davies' body.
Mary's kind of all over Connor at the moment.
There's a moment in which the three of them freeze, staring at one another, the rest of the party fading into the background. And then... Remus shoots James a worried look.
Sirius? Are you okay?
You too.
He actually reaches up to wipe tears of mirth from his eyes.
Oh, Merlin, you two kill me. James, sit down. Remus, you can let go. I'm not going to do anything. Christ.
Remus and James exchange another look before James sits down.
Not going to lie. Thought you were going to take this a bit differently.
Sirius takes a swig of his drink, still shaking his head.
Nah. Me and Mary are... anyway, she mentioned today that she fancies Davies. I told her to go for it.
He smirks.
Looks like she did.
This clears absolutely nothing up for James.
I'm sorry.
He pinches the bridge of his nose.
So you two broke up?
Sirius shrugs.
Sure, I suppose. I mean, it was just convenience, really, the two of us.
Convenience?
Remus looks just as confused as James feels. Sirius nods.
She was around, I was around, so we just decided to be around together. It was fun, casual, no big feelings or anything. You know how it is.
James thinks about Regulus, on the Quidditch pitch, in the tower. Thinks about the way that he laughs when he can't hold it back any longer, or the way his eyes get bright when he's excited, or the way he tastes.
No.
He doesn't know how it is. He says it without thinking, which would have been embarrassing if Remus hadn't said it at nearly the exact same time. Sirius's brow raises as he looks between the two of them, before smiling and shaking his head.
Bloody pair of poofs you two are.
It's work to keep his face neutral, breath catching in his chest. Which is stupid, because he's heard it hundreds of times before. It's not like it matters. Still, He finds it suddenly hard to meet his friend's gaze.
Nice one, Black.
Remus gets to his feet and pushes into the crowd.
Oi, wait, Remus, come on, I was just joking around.
It's too late, though. The room is full and loud, and Remus is lost within seconds. Sirius sighs, sinking a little ways down the wall.
Why does it feel like everything I say just pisses him off?
Sirius rolls his head to look at James, who prays his voice doesn't come out as strained as it feels.
Probably because it does.
Sirius downs the rest of his drink. They sit without talking, the noise of the party swallowing them whole. It's hard to get the voice in James's head to shut up. The one that says that Sirius will never forgive him. And that maybe that's not just because it's Regulus he's been sneaking around with. Maybe it's because... He shakes his head. No. He knows his best friend. Whatever Regulus says, James knows Sirius.
I'm gonna go get some more to drink.
When he doesn't get a response, he looks over to see that Sirius is currently preoccupied, glaring at Mooney, who's across the room now, talking to Dorcas.
Do you think he fancies her?
James blinks, looking from Sirius to Remus and back again, feeling as though he's missed something.
Dunno. Might, I guess.
Sirius doesn't respond, but the glaring intensifies.
You know,
James stands, slightly unsteady on his feet.
some smartass once told me torturing yourself doesn't help anybody.
Sirius turns to him, blinking through the haze of alcohol.
What?
James nods towards Remus.
You could just talk to him.
Sirius plays with the cup in his hand, biting at his lower lip.
Yeah, maybe.
James claps him on the shoulder.
I'll be back.
But he doesn't head over to the wide selection of drinks, courtesy of his allowance money and Sirius's flirting abilities. Instead, he takes the stairs 2 at a time, a risk in his current condition, stumbling his way to the bedroom. As soon as the door closes behind him, the world feels too quiet. A buzzing in James's ears he hadn't noticed before. He can feel the sweat on his skin more now that he's not surrounded by people, pulling his glasses off and wiping away the condensation. Not that the world isn't still blurry when he puts them back on. He trips over Sirius's trainers on his way to the bedside table, grabbing the map and then promptly collapsing onto his bed. There's no reason for Regulus to be anywhere but his own bedroom, anywhere that James can reach him. But he checks anyway, suddenly feeling restless with the need to see him, to touch him, because he can do that now, which is a bit mind-blowing if James is being honest, and terrifying. He bites back a smile at the sight of Regulus's name in the astronomy tower.
Hey.
Merlin, he must be pissed if he's talking to the bloody map. He lingers on the letters for too long before shaking himself awake again. He doesn't bother with the invisibility cloak. No one will notice him slipping out at this point in the night. He throws the map back into its drawer and tears out the door so fast he nearly tramples the person sitting on the stairs.
Oh shit.
He stumbles, grabbing hold of the wall, his balance not at its best.
Sorry, I didn't realise anyone was up there, or I would have moved.
James blinks. It's a bit dark in the stairwell, the warm light of the common room not quite reaching them. Of course, even in the shadows, that red hair is unmistakable.
Lily?
That is my name.
James sees her wipe at her face with the sleeve of her shirt.
Hey.
James sinks onto the step beside her.
What a cliché, right? Crying in the middle of a party over... well, anyway.
James feels significantly out of his element, the beat of the music below them rumbling in his chest.
You okay?
Another stupid question, with another stupidly clear answer. She lifts her head to look at him properly for the first time, green eyes shining. Even in the moonlight he can make out the faint freckles dotting her cheeks.
Probably not. I don't think you're the right person to help.
Ouch.
James clutches at his heart.
Right for the jugular, Evans.
She rolls her eyes.
I wasn't trying to be insulting. It's just... it's complicated, and you're...
Her eyes run him up and down in a way that does not feel flattering.
I can do complicated.
Lily looks at him skeptically.
You don't strike me as a complicated guy, Potter.
That's because you constantly underestimate me.
Her smile is weak, but it's still a smile. She runs both hands through her hair as she sits up a little straighter.
Oh, what the hell? Marlene and Mary are both too plastered to be of any use, and I can't find Alice anywhere.
She's probably shagging Frank in his room.
Lily shoots him a look, and James instantly raises his hands in surrender.
Sorry, no more sex jokes, promise.
Besides, if they're shagging anywhere, it's in the prefect's bathroom. Honestly, Potter.
My bad. You're absolutely right.
Try to do better next time.
She shoots him a cheeky smile out of the corner of her mouth that twists something in James's chest. He quickly pushes that feeling aside.
So, what is it that has you wasting an excellent party here on the stairs?
Her smile fades a little.
You sure you're going to be able to handle this?
Lay it on me.
It's Severus.
It takes a Herculean level of self-control for James to swallow the wanker that usually comes out of him automatically at the mention of Snape's name. Lily eyes him warily.
I see. Him in general, or did he do something specific?
Lily drops her gaze again, picking at her tights.
I don't know.
She chews on the inside of her cheek, struggling to explain, and James just waits, not trusting himself enough to speak unprompted.
Listen. I know you don't like him.
I do not.
And to be honest, in the beginning I think you were a bit of a dick about it.
Hey,
And a snob.
Wow.
James runs a hand through his hair, leaning back on the stairs to look at Lily properly.
Don't hold back.
Surely you must be able to see that.
She turns almost fully around in her seat so they can face one another.
He started most of the fights we had.
First of all, no he didn't. And second of all, it wasn't fair.
James arches his brow.
Excuse me? What wasn't fair?
She waves her hand inarticulately in the air.
You two. It was never an even match.
James continues to stare at her, unconvinced.
Yeah, okay, Sev can be rude, but you...
You are James Potter.
That is my name.
And he's glad to see her smile a little.
So nothing he ever said touched you? Not really. But when you hit back, I mean... You made one comment about his hair and he had the whole school making fun of him for months. And that stupid name you call him.
Snivelous?
Yes, exactly. Everyone calls him that now. Everyone. Sometimes even the professors.
James does his best to hold back a snort. Lily's eyes are wide and bright, and James loves it. He'd forgotten, these past few months ignoring her, how much he loves it. Watching her go off, even when it's at him. Watching how fucking passionate she can be.
Nothing he did ever really stuck to you. Ever really impacted your life.
So what? Because people like me more, he gets to be a prick?
Lily runs a hand over her face.
I'm just saying, I'm saying you were punching down. You're rich and handsome and popular. So yeah, he made some petty remarks. But you could have just left it alone because, if we're being honest, it didn't matter to you. But instead, you decided to turn the whole school against him just for the fun of it. And that made you a dick.
James sits with that for a moment, letting the noises of the party drift between them. Eventually, he pulls himself upright.
Okay.
Lily looks startled.
Okay.
Maybe I was being a dick sometimes. I wasn't. I didn't think about it like that. I just knew I could get him back, so I did. It never occurred to me to let it go.
She looks at him curiously, green eyes narrowing.
Who are you and what have you done with James Potter?
Hey, I'm trying, okay?
She holds his gaze for a moment longer before shaking her head.
No, I know. Thank you for, acknowledging that.
No problem.
He waits for her to keep going, and when she doesn't, he leans forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped.
You said, in the beginning.
Huh?
Lily looks up, mind coming back from wherever it had wandered off to.
You started by saying that in the beginning I was just being a dick, which makes it sound like you think something has changed.
Oh. Well.
He watches her try and fail to hide a grimace.
Well, now he...
She looks back at him.
I'm not an idiot, you know.
James nods.
I do know that, yeah.
I see what he's doing and who he's hanging out with, and I hate it.
There's a pause. Her mouth still open like there's more she has to say, but she can't quite manage it.
It's hard to actually hate him.
And though James personally finds Snape very easy to hate, he can understand what she's saying. At least in theory.
He's your best mate.
Lily blinks, surprised.
Yeah, and I know how that sounds. How trivial, but...
Hey, I get it. If anyone gets it, it's me.
She nods slowly.
I love him is the problem.
She isn't meeting James's eye anymore, and he resists the urge to demand further explanation from her.
I really do. But these days, I just don't fucking like him, and I don't know how to handle that. Like tonight, everything was fine, and then And then I said something about the party, which of course set him off on a rant about you and how insufferable you are. It was all very boring and repetitive. But then he started going on Remus, and
He said what about Remus?
Lily rolls her eyes.
Oh, leave it. I went off on him already, put him in his bloody place, and he apologised, but the fact that he said it at all...
What did he say, Evans?
She narrows her eyes at his tone.
I'm not telling you, Potter.
In case I didn't already make that abundantly clear.
He's my mate.
He's my mate too, actually.
Not in the same way.
Because honestly, the fact that Lily thinks they can even compare their relationships is laughable to James.
Besides, if you were really his mate, you'd stop hanging out with Severus fucking Snape.
At that, her expression hardens. And if he hadn't been angry and drunk, James probably would have regretted it, but he doesn't.
It's like you haven't listened to anything I've said.
I listened. Here's the thing, Lily. Your mate is awful. He's awful to pretty much everyone except for you. He's not just rude or... What is it you said? Oh yeah, petty. He's a bloody bigot. And what I heard you say just now is that you know that. So Gryffindor the fuck up and walk away from him already. Because him apologising to you is not good enough anymore. It isn't fair. Not to Remus, or to any of your other friends he's been attacking. I mean, fuck Lily, it's not even fair to you.
Lily's eyes are wide, the colour unreal as she stares at him speechless, and suddenly James feels exhausted. Exhausted by this conversation and by Snape and all the things that they aren't saying. Petty wasn't the right word for what Snape is, but neither was bigot. They have a name now. James runs a hand through his hair.
Sorry.
Though he's not entirely sure what he's apologising for, he's just desperate to get away from the noise and the heat and her. Her more than the rest of it.
I gotta go.
James.
There was a time when Lily calling out to him, saying his first name, would have stopped him in his tracks. But it's not now. He's already down the stairs and he doesn't turn back. Reg is reading when James finally gets to him. He pauses at the door, just watching for a moment, feeling the fingers of Regulus's warming charm drifting over him. Some of the anger from his conversation with Lily starts to fade, and when Regulus looks up, his grey eyes instantly finding James, he forgets about it altogether.
Don't you have a party to be hosting?
The younger boy marks his page as he slides the book off his lap.
They'll survive without me. Besides, couldn't leave you up here waiting for me all night.
Regulus rolls his eyes.
I wasn't waiting for you.
Sure you weren't.
I wasn't.
If that's what you need to tell yourself.
James pushes off the wall, the world around him a little fuzzy. Regulus is wearing a dark blue jumper, which is a weird thing to notice except that he's usually in black or green. But this feels so much more natural somehow. When James reaches him, he runs his fingers along the collar, feeling the soft cotton between his fingers. Regulus arches his brow.
Colour looks good on you.
Colour? Not very specific.
No, but still true though. I've only seen blue and green, but both have been brilliant, so I'm sure the rest look just as good.
You're drunk.
Very much, yes.
His hand moves from the collar of Regulus's shirt up his neck to his jaw, James's thumb running along Regulus's lower lip.
James.
His voice sends a chill along James's spine, his eyes intently on Regulus's mouth.
You're drunk.
He's learned a lot about Regulus recently, specifically about how he likes to be touched, which is slowly. He wants to see you, to know where you are, to know when you're coming. So James makes an effort to broadcast his movements at all times. He doesn't mind, even likes it, how intentional it all is. Slowly, he lowers himself to his knees, Regulus opening his thighs for him almost automatically so that James can press forward, hand still on Reg's face.
James.
But whatever else was going to come out of his mouth is swallowed by James's lips. He is a tad sloppier than usual, his whole body aching at the contact.
This is all we're doing.
He quickly finds Regulus's hands on his shoulders, pushing him back.
I mean it, James. This is it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not even that drunk.
He feels Regulus's smile as they come together again.
It took you 10 minutes to figure out how to open the door.
James pulls back slightly.
Bold of you to assume I can open a door sober.
James eats up Regulus's laughter, tongue lapping into his mouth, hungry for every piece. For all his whining, he's more than happy with this, with the warmth of Regulus's hands as they skate over his back, his chest, pulling at the hem of his shirt in search of skin. Regulus tastes like something sweet, his legs tightening around James, like he's afraid he's going to move. As if he would. Regulus pulls back from James's mouth and kisses along his jaw, down to his neck, meeting his collarbone.
You're gorgeous, you know that.
Regulus's face is once again level with his. For a second their foreheads rest against one another.
You're drunk.
Yeah,
James's hand moves to the back of Regulus's neck, holding it carefully.
but it'd still be true if I was sober.
This time, when Regulus kisses him, he sinks his teeth in, ripping a sound out of James he's never heard himself make before.
God, Reg.
He wants to be closer. Somehow. Impossibly. He wants to feel every inch of him, wants to...
I knew it!
It takes a second for James's intoxicated and very preoccupied brain to fully comprehend that that voice belongs to neither himself nor Regulus. It takes Regulus significantly less time, his mouth ripping away from James, his whole body going still in a way that is incredibly disconcerting.
Oh, fuck.
Marlene?
James, who is still on his knees between Regulus's legs, turns towards the door to find a white-faced Marlene standing there, hands clasped to her mouth, head shaking back and forth. Oh, James thinks. Oh, this is not ideal. Regulus, apparently no longer frozen, is suddenly on his feet, stepping round James with his wand raised and pointed at Marlene's chest. James scrambles to his feet, attempting to get between them.
If you breathe a fucking word of this, I will hurt you in ways you cannot possibly imagine.
Reg.
Do you understand?
Oi, Christ.
James steps in front of Marlene, hands raised as he meets Regulus's stone-cold stare. Gone is the soft boy he'd been wrapped up in only seconds earlier. His mouth still red from James's lips, hair still mossed from his hand. The person in front of him is all sharp edges.
Reg, put that away.
James swats at his wand, but Regulus quickly steps out of his reach. There is something feral about Regulus, like a wild animal who's just been backed into a corner.
Regulus, put the wand down now.
For a second he thinks Regulus might actually curse him, which, well, James doesn't know what he'd do with that, but after a few more intense moments of staring, Regulus lowers his wand. James turns to Marlene, who still looks thoroughly freaked out.
Ma.
James nods towards the door.
Let's talk, yeah?
She nods, understanding immediately and moving towards the door.
I'll be back.
When he doesn't get a response, he pauses, halfway through the door.
Reg.
He waits until grey eyes meet his.
I'm coming back, okay? Just wait here, yeah? Please.
It's small and stiff, but eventually Regulus nods, James's chest aching at the blank look on his face.
James.
He's barely taken 2 steps into the stairwell before Marlene is on him, hands grabbing hold of both of his arms.
James, I'm so sorry. That was so stupid of me. I don't know what I was thinking. I've been drinking and then I saw you sneak off and my stupid brain thought it would be funny. I didn't think...
Whoa, okay. I'm going to need you to breathe, alright?
He ducks his head so he can meet her eyes. She nods, taking in a deep breath and letting it go shakily.
Shit.
She looks at James again.
That was Regulus Black.
Yeah.
James's chest gives a small squeeze at the look on her face, her eyes the size of dinner plates.
Does Sirius know?
The ache grows.
No.
Shit.
She shakes her head again.
Shit. He pulled his wand on me.
Yeah, I know. He does that.
He threatens you?
James feels a small swelling of warmth at the sudden protectiveness in her eyes.
No, that's not what I meant. He's just... jumpy.
Marlene looks like she doesn't quite believe him.
This... Merlin, James. I did not see this coming when I guessed you were wooing someone.
James wrinkles his nose.
Still not a fan of the term wooing. And believe me, feeling is mutual. It just sort of happened. Yeah, listen, Ma. You can't tell anyone about this, okay?
Though James wouldn't have thought it possible, her eyes get bigger.
No, I won't. Of course I won't.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
He offers her a weak smile before nodding over his shoulder.
I should, go make sure he's okay.
She nods slowly, reluctantly letting go of him.
Right. Yeah, of course.
She takes a few steps down the stairs before stopping.
I really am sorry, James.
But he waves her apology away.
It's fine. I've done stupider things.
He waits until she's out of sight before he opens the door again. Regulus is standing at the ledge, back to the door, arms stiff at his sides. The sight makes something in James's stomach twist. They stay like that for too long, James not knowing what to say.
Well?
Regulus doesn't turn around.
She's not going to tell anyone.
And you know that. How?
She said so.
That doesn't mean anything, James.
She's my friend.
That doesn't mean anything either.
It does to me. It does to her too. Reg, look at me.
He steps closer, but not too close. He wants to reach out, but doesn't. It takes a while, but eventually Regulus faces him. It's hard to see the mask so firmly back in place. The walls so thick and high around him that James doesn't know how he's going to get back over them.
I'm not going to let anything happen to you, okay?
He doesn't know where the words come from exactly, only that he wants to take some of the fear out of Regulus's eyes.
Don't make promises you can't keep, James.
I won't.
Another moment passes before his shoulders sag as he brings his hands up to scrub his face.
You really believe that, don't you? Just like you believe you can trust McKinnon.
I do, and I can.
Hoping somehow he'll be able to get Regulus to see that he isn't alone. That everyone isn't trying to punish him. Regulus drops his hands away from his face.
I'm tired.
James nods.
Okay.
Regulus grabs his book from the ledge, very determinedly, not looking at James as he walks towards the door.
Regulus.
James is relieved when the younger boy actually stops.
I'll see you tomorrow, yeah?
Eventually, Regulus's eyes seem to find their way back to him.
Yeah. You'll see me tomorrow.
And somehow that manages to take the edge off the sound of the door slamming closed. Regulus is complicated. It isn't that James is completely lost. He has been friends with Sirius since he was 11, but it's different. Regulus does come back, the night after Halloween, but he brings the telescope and holds himself apart from James. They talk. It's nice, but it's stilted. Regulus never lets either of them get too close, doesn't laugh too loud, doesn't say anything important. James wants to talk about it, about Marlene, about Regulus's reaction, about how they can be more careful in the future, but he's met with silence, with an unreadable expression, with empty eyes. They don't touch, which is okay, except James doesn't know what's allowed here, what Regulus wants, where the boundaries are. Regulus keeps coming back, just like always. He smiles at James and it feels like he means it, but he keeps the walls up and the mask on, and sometimes James feels like maybe they're just good friends. Hell, maybe they're just acquaintances. And that hurts more than he would have expected. It had felt big, whatever was happening between them. It had felt like standing on the precipice of something, and now James is just waiting.
Oh, brilliant!
Sirius tears into another package from his uncle. James doesn't miss the way he carefully folds the accompanying letter and slips it into his pocket. He knows how much this means to Sirius, having someone that's his. Knows that there's a part of him that wants to keep it that way, sharing some of it with the three of them, but keeping the rest for himself.
Mooney, verdict?
Sirius turns the Muggle record around so that Remus can see it on the other side of the table. Remus looks up from his breakfast, smiling as much at Sirius's excitement as he is at the record.
No way! I've been looking for that Fleetwood album for ages.
Sirius preens, and James quickly ducks his head, trying to hide his own smile. He was worried at first, but so far it's been really good, this thing with his uncle. The impromptu pranking has certainly been on a decline, which James is a fan of, if for no other reason than he hates being left out.
You've got free period in the afternoon, yeah? We can listen to it if you want.
Remus blinks, fork full of egg missing his mouth.
Yeah, sure, yeah. We can do that.
Cool.
Sirius nods, eyes already back on the track list. Without meaning to, or maybe completely meaning to, James finds himself searching the Slytherin table. gaze stopping at the sight of dark curls and grey eyes. Regulus is sitting with Crouch and Rosier, smirking at something one of them said, looking every inch the Black Prince he's supposed to be. It's hard sometimes, making the two versions of him fit together in James's head. He'll see Regulus in the halls and he won't even recognise him. It's a bit frightening if he's being honest.
Morning.
Lily slides into the seat beside James, jolting him out of his thoughts and nearly making him choke on his breakfast in the process. All four marauders turn to stare at her in mild shock as she starts filling up her plate. Pete leans over towards Remus.
Has James finally imperioused her?
James scowls at him while Sirius barely keeps it together beside him.
Problem?
Lily takes a bite of her toast like this is the most natural thing in the world. While James knows for a fact that he hasn't imperioused Lily, he is not at all certain that somebody else hasn't.
Of course not.
Remus eyes how the rest of them continue to stare at her like she's the giant squid and not a girl they've had classes with for the past 5 years.
How are you doing with the potions revising, by the way?
Remus starts cutting up his bacon again.
I've been meaning to ask you if you're free for a study session this week.
Lily nods, chewing thoughtfully.
I can probably do Thursday. At lunch?
Brilliant.
The rest of them slowly go back to their breakfasts as well, except for Peter, whose eyes have grown to about twice their normal size as they bounce between James and Lily.
All right, Potter.
Yeah, I'm alright. What about you? Hit your head recently? Drink any funny tasting pumpkin juice?
Lily rolls her eyes.
I don't need to sustain a brain injury to want to sit with you at breakfast.
I think that might have been the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
A crease forms between her eyes and she frowns.
Is that really the nicest thing I've ever said to you?
Lily, I'm joking.
Are you?
James runs a hand through his hair.
Well, to be fair to you, I haven't really given you a lot of opportunities to be nice, have I?
Lily continues to frown, poking at the food on her plate before speaking again.
I think I got so used to you being...
An arrogant toe rag?
James elbows Sirius in the ribs. Sirius grins through the pain.
Sure.
Lily smiles despite herself.
I was so used to you being an arrogant toe rag that I didn't realise when you stopped.
He stopped? James, you should have told us. I had business cards made up and everything.
James turns to glare at Sirius.
You can leave, you know.
Could, yeah. Probably won't, though.
Sorry.
James returns his attention to Lily.
You were just singing my praises.
Not sure that's what she was doing.
Remus looks entirely too amused by the whole situation.
I mean...
Pete scratches the back of his head.
Pretty close, though. For them, at least.
I'm just trying to say...
Lily is clearly enjoying herself.
That what you said the other night. It was pretty spot on.
James smiles, though he has to admit that this was not exactly how he was expecting Lily to react to him telling her off.
Told you I could do complicated.
You did. So I thought, maybe... Well, Marlene is really rather fond of you, and so's Mary and Remus.
I'm still on the fence about him personally.
Literally no one asked you.
I thought we could try to be, you know, mates?
James can feel the shock on his own face.
Yeah, okay. Mates sounds good.
Lily nods.
Good.
None of them seem to know what to do then, all sitting awkwardly staring at one another.
Should we shake on it?
James grins, attempting to fill the silence.
Do you start all your friendships like business deals?
He shrugs.
Just feels more official that way.
Well, in that case, you've convinced me.
Lily holds out her hand and James takes it, feeling a small part of him shiver at the contact.
Wow.
Peter stares at their linked hands from across the table.
I really, honestly never saw this coming.
Remus, however, is looking very smug, turning his gaze on Sirius.
You owe me 10 galleons, Black.
You
Only
bet
10
on
galleons,
this.
Remus. Really?
He shrugs, holding out his hand as a very grumbly Sirius starts digging through his pockets.
You were very adamant about your desire to drown him at the bottom of the lake. Made it hard to feel confident.
James turns slowly to look at Lily, arching his brow.
I'm sorry, you wanted to what?
Lily rolls her eyes, waving around a forkful of pancake.
I was joking, obviously.
Obviously.
You're too short, Padfoot.
Remus's hand is held out expectantly.
Well, I'm not an heiress anymore. I don't just have galleons to throw away.
And Eris is a girl. You're just an heir. Or you were just an heir.
Sirius rolls his eyes.
There's no flair to heir. It's so dull, so short. Nothing exciting happens.
I have to agree with Sirius. Eris is way more fun.
Thank you, Evans.
James looks between the two of them before taking off his glasses and rubbing his eyes, not entirely certain he isn't dreaming. Not only has Lily Evans elected to have breakfast with them, she's getting along with Sirius?
Pads, I know for a fact you have 2 more galleons. Pay up.
Listen, Moony. Moons, my love, my darling, my one and only.
I'm not accepting flattery.
Remus's cheeks have gone a very dark shade of crimson. They stare at one another for a moment before Sirius eventually breaks, turning to James.
Prongs, can I borrow...
I am not giving you money to pay off a bet you made against me, you traitor.
It wasn't against you per se.
Sirius flashes Remus a pointed look.
James, come on, do me a solid.
But James shakes his head, struggling not to laugh.
No fucking way.
All right. I'll see if I can scrounge the rest up when we get back to the room, you tyrant.
Remus shoves his galleons into his pocket. It's a bit mad, really, James thinks, sitting there between Lily and Sirius. Mad that this is happening, that it works. Though James would never admit it, he would have bet against it too.
So, are we going to beat the shit out of Ravenclaw this Saturday or what?
Oh, I knew I liked you.
Usually, James waits for Regulus, periodically checking the map to see when he goes up to the tower. But for whatever reason, he's too impatient tonight. He walks around the halls instead, avoiding Filch, but stopping to talk to Frank.
Technically, I should be docking you points for wandering to halls.
James just grins.
You wouldn't do that to your favourite chaser, would you?
Frank gives him a flat look.
Just don't cause any major catastrophes.
I'll do my best.
By the time he makes it up to the astronomy tower, Regulus is there, standing in front of his telescope, expert fingers toying with the dials. He explained to James one night what they all do. James had liked listening to him, had liked watching Regulus wave his arms around, his face bright, passionate. James hadn't understood a word of what he was saying, mind you, but that had been a good night.
Fancy meeting you here.
James has the door closed. Regulus doesn't respond, or react at all really, which seems cold even for him. James waits for a second, but when nothing is forthcoming, he makes his way over to the ledge, sitting down facing Regulus. It's not that Regulus hasn't been quieter recently, since Halloween, but something about this feels different. The air between them tight, like a string pulled to its breaking point.
Reg.
James.
The cold tone makes him flinch. He still can't really see Regulus's face, half hidden behind the telescope, looking up at a family that doesn't exist anymore. James's leg starts to bounce nervously.
Are you okay?
Yes.
James again waits for more and again gets nothing.
Are you sure? Because I'm getting some very distinctly not okay vibes over here.
James wishes that he could go back to listening to Regulus talk endlessly about his telescope, or his favourite Quidditch team, or the best flavours of ice cream at Florian's. He wishes that he didn't feel like he was standing on thin ice, praying it didn't crack.
I'm fine.
James hates being so close to Regulus and at the same time feeling like he has no idea where he is or how to reach him. But then Regulus speaks again, unprompted for the first time all night.
You and Evans seem to be getting along well at breakfast.
James blinks, thrown.
Yeah, she wants to be mates, so that's nice.
Mates.
Regulus pulls away from the telescope for the first time. James arches his brow.
Is that a problem?
No. The opposite, really. I'm sure there'll be a parade or something. The minister will probably make it a national holiday.
James is well and truly lost now.
What are you...
And then it hits him.
Wait, are you jealous?
Regulus stiffens.
No. What would be the point? It was bound to happen eventually. She was always going to come around.
Come around?
James feels a little dumbfounded.
Reg, she wants to be mates, not bloody boyfriend-girlfriend.
Right now. But really, it always made sense, you two. So, you have my blessing to, I don't know, ride off into the sunset or whatever it is normal people do.
Normal people?
James is starting to feel a bit like a parrot at this point.
Reg.
He gets to his feet and instantly Regulus steps back, causing James to freeze. They stay like that for a minute, neither of them moving. James's hand runs over his face as he tries to settle the knot that's been tying itself in his stomach.
What's happening right now?
He can see Regulus struggling to swallow.
I don't know.
She just wants to be friends, Regulus. And even if she didn't, that's all I want from her now, okay? I'm not riding off into the sunset with anyone, Jesus.
It would be easier.
James gives him a flat look.
Firstly, I highly doubt it. Secondly, what about me makes you think I'm interested in easy?
Regulus breaks eye contact, shaking his head and looking off to the side, into the empty night. From here, it's all sky.
I don't understand what you're still doing here. I've been horrible to you.
That surprises James.
You've been scared. It's not the same thing.
Isn't it?
And James doesn't know what to say to that, so they just sit with it.
I can't do things. Sometimes.
He still isn't looking at James, still staring into space.
Things?
Regulus closes his eyes, a look of frustration crossing his face, though not directed at James, he doesn't think.
Can't always be here. Be touched. Sometimes I have to just, I don't know, lock some parts of me away, or it gets too much.
James feels his chest ache.
And then I saw you two this morning, and I just thought, you just looked so perfect, and I thought, I bet she doesn't ever have to disappear. I bet she's normal and well-adjusted. I bet she's nice.
Reg.
James slowly takes a step forward but doesn't touch him.
You're nice.
I'm not, though. I know I'm not, and I hate it. It's just... this.
He motions between them.
It doesn't come naturally to me. And I want to not care. Not about you or any of it. God, I want to not care so badly it hurts. But I do. I do care.
He looks at James for the first time.
And
But he cuts himself off, shaking his head. It takes James a minute to work out which words are worth saying, because he has so many of them. He always has so many of them for Reg.
I'm not going to pretend to understand everything about you. When you want to tell me, if you want to tell me, I'm here. But until then, I just want you to let me be around you. However you can. Just don't shut me out completely, okay? Because this week was hard.
He runs a hand through his hair.
I feel like I've been out here on my own.
There's a pause before Regulus nods.
Yeah. Yes, I can do that.
His shoulders sag as he presses into the wall behind him, face flickering between controlled and terrified.
Reg, can I touch you?
I hate that you have to ask that.
I don't.
Regulus eyes him for a moment before reaching forward and tugging him close, forehead resting against James's chest. And oh, that feels good. To have him again. To hold him.
I just want you, Reg.
James kisses the top of his head.
Just you. However you are.
That's a ridiculous thing to want.
James runs his hands slowly up and down Regulus's back, feeling the heat through the fabric of his jumper.
Nah, it's brilliant, really.
Potter scores his 6th goal in the game against Ravenclaw, with McDonald's other forward starting off with a steady lead.
James feels good. I mean, he always feels good playing, but this game is different. Sirius pulls his broom up beside James.
Now that is the showmanship I'm looking for.
I live to please you.
Damn straight.
The Ravenclaw chasers are looking to their captain, but Lorelai's got eyes on their keeper. Cresswell will want to get that quaffle far out of his zone with the positioning of the Lions, and he launches it nearly halfway across the field.
Merlin, the arm on that kid.
The Ravenclaw chasers are on it, but Potter is already chasing the ball down the pitch.
The wind whips against his face as he presses himself closer to his broom, eyes zeroing in on the quaffle. One of the Ravenclaw players tries to get in his way. Mistake. James dips under him with ease, letting his broom spiral the way he knows the crowd likes. The Ravenclaw strategy seems to be simple enough. They have a pair of chasers who work exceptionally well together, so they send them down the field, passing the quaffle back and forth and turning the match into a giant game of monkey in the middle. James doesn't want to play. He keeps low and fast, getting himself underneath them as they move down the pitch. Frank is probably the best keeper at Hogwarts, so James isn't particularly worried about them scoring, but that doesn't mean he doesn't want to steal the goal. They're nearly at the Gryffindor net, but James smiles, because he's figured out the pattern, which means he knows who's going to try and make the shot, and if he knows who's going to shoot, that means...
Merlin's balls. Sorry, Professor, but James Potter has just stolen the quaffle.
They weren't expecting him, so the defence he runs into on his way back across the pitch is pretty sloppy.
Potter feints to the left and slips by. He is in the nest. That keeper really isn't bad, but he's shaken.
James grins, aiming the quaffle through the top of the centre ring.
Another goal for Gryffindor.
The noise in the stadium fills James up. He flies over to the stands, gliding along and high-fiving his classmates, which is technically not allowed, but that's never stopped him before.
Mr. Potter, stop showboating and take your position on the field immediately.
James looks over to the commentator's booth and finds the rather austere, older-looking witch staring pointedly at him, arms crossed over her chest. James's smile widens.
Yes, Mum.
He salutes her rather theatrically before flying back into the game.
And the quaffle is back in play, no competition for Ravenclaw's catch. But MacDonald is taking the lead, blocking Green from receiving from Emerson. It's about time those old dogs learn new tricks. She ducks Lorelei but moves as the quaffle goes to Ash.
Yes!
James follows alongside Mary in case she needs support. Not that she's likely to. She's dodging ravens like a motherfucker.
And Gryffindor's in possession again! Potter and MacDonald are making a joke of Ravenclaw's defences this game, and it looks like...
James has never cracked his skull open before, but he imagines it probably feels like this. At first it's just the pressure, something heavy colliding with his head. The world blinks, his broom no longer underneath him, an incredible weight pulling his head down, down, down. At first it's just the pressure, and then it's all pain. He doesn't know where in the forest he is, which is odd. Usually he's better at not getting lost. It's dark, almost pitch black, the moon coming down through the trees in droplets. James steps forward, realizing that he has 2 feet and 2 hands and no hooves. Somewhere in the distance he hears a howl, his head shooting up. He looks for his wand, but he can't find it.
Sirius? Peter?
He doesn't know how he ended up here like this, but he knows he needs to find them. It's hard to walk. It feels like the air's too thick, like he's wading through water. He looks for the usual landmarks, but everything is blurring together. Distorted. Identical.
Sirius? Peter?
Something rustles behind him and James whips around, but all he sees are trees and the empty dark spaces between them. The unease crawling over his skin. He has to find the others.
James?
He turns around again and this time Reg is standing there. The moonlight that is dim everywhere else is bright on his face. He looks blurry around the edges.
Hey.
James smiles automatically as he steps closer.
What are you doing here?
You said I needed to see it.
He shrugs, smirk tugging at his mouth.
Well, here I am.
And what do you think?
Lots of trees.
That tends to happen in forests.
Honestly, I don't feel that it lives up to the hype.
Wow. Bold words from someone who was too afraid to come in here.
I wasn't afraid.
Sure you...
James's head snaps in the direction of the noise, once again seeing nothing but trees and shadows. It hits him, suddenly, while he's usually in the forest at night.
Reg, you have to...
But when he turns back, Regulus is gone and Sirius is in his place.
Did you just call me Reg?
James is finding it hard to keep a grip on what's happening. Eyes bounding around looking for Regulus, not sure where he is, but knowing he shouldn't be out here alone. Not if Moony...
James? Hello? Why the fuck were you talking to my little brother?
His brain feels fuzzy. Everywhere he looks, everything looks the same. It's not just that they're surrounded by trees, but they're the same trees. He feels dizzy.
Did you see him? Did you see where he went? We have to get him and then we have to get out of here. Something isn't right. Why aren't we...
Sirius is gone. He can't tell which one of them that is. He can't tell if it's both. He starts running, barely dodging the trees as he shoots through them, the voices getting louder. This is my fault, he thinks. This is my fault. I brought them here. He doesn't know if it's true, but it feels true, and suddenly every part of him is shaking. I'm not going to make it, he thinks frantically as the noise is strangling him from the inside out. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to... James's eyes fly open as he wakes with a jolt. His chest is heaving, fingers gripping the bed as he tries to figure out what's happened. Where he is.
Prongs?
James flinches until he sees it's Sirius, and then he almost cries.
You're okay.
Peter and Remus come into focus on either side of him. He's in the hospital wing. Of course he is.
You're okay.
James collapses back down onto his pillows but reaches out for Sirius anyway, hand wrapping around his wrist, making sure he's real.
Yeah, of course I am.
He doesn't pull away from James's touch.
Merlin, it's you who's not okay.
James's eyes have fluttered closed because it hurts more when they're open.
Me?
James?
James reluctantly opens his eyes again, meeting his friend's concerned stare.
Do you remember what happened?
I remember being alone in the woods, he thinks. I remember screaming.
No,
His head gives a sudden bone-grinding ache, the pain running through his whole body.
Oh, fuck.
He squeezes Sirius's wrist.
Prongs?
Oh, sorry. Just hurts.
Should I get Pomfrey?
James is no longer able to see properly as a dozen black spots suddenly fill up his vision.
Yeah, you better.
James struggles to get his thoughts in order.
Oh, someone remind me how I got here.
His eyes are still closed. He doesn't need to look to know Sirius and Remus are trading glances back and forth. The four of them barely need to use words most of the time.
Quidditch. You were in the middle of the game. Doing well. Really well. Actually, we think that's why...
Fucking bones. Aim the bludger right at your head.
That's what I get for showing off then.
You remember?
He starts to nod and then instantly regrets it.
Fuck, yeah. You've jogged my memory. Game against Ravenclaw. 110 Gryffindor, 30 Ravenclaw. Mary had the Quirrell.
Another thought strikes him and his eyes fly open. A mistake, but he pushes through.
We won, right? Right.
But Sirius won't meet his eye.
What? Oh, come on, how? We were crushing them.
Another look is traded between Sirius and Remus.
Well, neither of us saw it, but...
Wait, what does he mean you didn't see it?
Oh, come on. You really think I was going to watch you have your head nearly knocked off and then keep playing a stupid fucking game?
James blinks, silencing the part of him that wants to say, yes, obviously, it's Quidditch. A few tense moments pass before Sirius speaks again, still not looking at him.
I thought... I've never seen a hit like that, James. For a moment, it really looked like...
He's kicked off the team. Bones is.
James tries to let that sink in, eyes still on Sirius and his unnaturally pale face.
Hey.
He pulls on the arm he's still holding, causing Sirius to stumble forward, to make eye contact with him.
I'm okay.
He smiles despite the blinding headache currently raging in his skull. A pained look ripples across Sirius's face.
James, I'm so sorry I didn't see it.
For a moment, James is genuinely confused.
What? Oh, Jesus, Pads, this is not your fault. Of course you didn't. I didn't even have the Quirrell. There was no reason to think that thing was going to be coming for me.
I should have been paying more attention.
James turns to Remus for help.
Oh, don't look at me. I've been trying to get him to stop blaming himself for hours.
Hours?
James's brow raises.
How long have I been out?
Sirius looks like he's going to answer when the curtains are pulled back again and Pomfrey and Peter file in.
Good.
The older woman gives him a once-over.
Still remember how to talk then?
Was there a possibility I wouldn't?
Pomfrey starts waving her wand over him, silently casting what James assumes are diagnostic charms.
You never know with brain injuries. No memory troubles. Name, location, year?
James, Hogwarts, 1975. I'm fine.
He had trouble remembering what happened right before the injury.
Remus earns himself a scowl from James.
Hey, I'm not walking out of here just to have you have some kind of brain bleed or something.
Sirius sends him a look from across the bed.
Brain bleed? Have you been watching Muggle Telly again?
I don't see how that's relevant.
I heard of one bloke who hit his head and remembered everything except the name of his wife.
Oh, ow, Pete. No jokes, please.
Not a joke, just a fact. All right, Mr. Potter.
Pomfrey slips her wand back into the front pocket of her apron.
Looks like everything is healing nicely. We'll have to stay here for tonight and tomorrow, then we can reassess.
Oh, come on, Poppy.
Which earns him a pointed stare from the nurse.
I mean, Madam Pomfrey. I'm good, really, just a little...
He tries to sit up and instantly feels a shockwave of pain wash over his whole body. His vision goes white for a minute, and the next thing you know, Sirius's hands are on his shoulders, helping to ease him back down. Pomfrey crosses her arms over her chest from the end of his bed.
You're in no fit state to be going anywhere. And you'll have to talk to Minerva as well.
McGonagall.
Yes, you won't be able to fly for at least 3 weeks.
What?
James goes to move again, but this time Remus holds him back. Sirius and Peter both looking at Pomfrey with similar expressions of horror.
You must be joking.
James finds himself incredibly grateful for the shared outrage.
Yeah, that seems really long.
Pomfrey looks, frankly, unimpressed with a lot of them.
That boy just had his school fuse back together.
Wait, I what?
Despite what you may think, the brain is a very delicate organ. So until he is completely healed, he will not be throwing himself into the sky. Am I clear?
But...
Mr. Black, I would strongly suggest you agree with me.
After a few minutes of struggling, Sirius eventually gives in.
Yes, ma'am.
Pomfrey nods, satisfied.
Good. You have 15 minutes. And then you are to return to your dormitory.
Oh, come on!
15.
She holds up a hand, shoving the protest back down their throats.
I do not know what misled you into thinking this was a democracy, but I assure you it is not. 15 minutes and then I start docking points.
No one argues, and after another sharp look at all of them, she parts the curtains again.
Shit, James! Ow!
He glares at Sirius, who has just smacked the back of his head.
Not helping, Pete.
James brings his hands up to his face. They're cold, and for a moment it feels nice.
I don't want to talk about it. I'll lose it if I talk about it, and my head already feels like it's splitting open.
Yeah, way too soon for that joke, mate.
Sorry.
You need us to get you anything, James?
No, I don't think so. Besides, I doubt Pomfrey would let you guys back in.
We're marauders. No one lets us do anything.
Peter shyly grins. James finds himself smiling back.
Fair enough. I am fine, though.
5 minutes!
Merlin, that woman.
We should go. You need to sleep.
Remus picks up the coat he'd thrown over the back of his chair.
We'll be back tomorrow, though. First thing.
Remus looks at Sirius, a question in his eyes, but Sirius waves him off.
Give me a minute, yeah?
Sure. Pete?
Peter nods.
Don't do that again, okay, Prongs? It was bloody scary.
I'll do my best, Pete.
They slip through the slit in the curtains, leaving James and Sirius alone. James arches his brow.
James,
I swear if you apologize one more time, I'm going to explode.
Explode?
Yeah, I know. It's the only thing I could think of. I just got my head split by a bludger. Cut me some slack, okay?
When he doesn't get a reply, he drops his hand, looking up again.
James, I'm supposed to have your back.
And you do.
I should have seen it. I should have stopped it.
Serious things happen. And despite what your mother may have told you, they're not all your fault.
Oh, dick move bringing my mum into this.
Sometimes you need to be reminded that that voice in your head is hers, so you can tell it to fuck off.
Christ. Alright. You sound like Mooney.
I hope so. He's the only one of us with any sense.
Ain't that the truth?
Sirius Black, you better not still be in my hospital wing.
Sirius rolls his eyes.
I guess that's my cue.
Go. You know Mooney will have made Peter wait for you, and he's probably started whinging by now.
Sirius nods but seems reluctant to go, nervous eyes still running James over.
Before you woke up, I thought... It sounded like you said Reg.
James feels his heart stop. Suddenly he's back in the forest, staring at his best friend. Why the fuck were you talking to my little brother? Sirius seems to take his silence as something else.
And I know it sounds mental, and Remus and Pete didn't even hear it, but it just... I don't know, forget it. It's dumb. It was probably just my brain playing tricks on me, yeah?
He looks at James, clearly hoping for validation, worried he's upset him. James wants to tell him the truth. He does. Desperately.
Yeah, probably. Can't imagine why else. Unless I was dreaming about Quidditch or something.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
James is well aware that people lie all the time. He does, certainly. To his mother, to his professors, to Frank. But Sirius? What is it he said? I'm supposed to have your back. That's it, that's them. They have each other's backs, always. It's important to James. Sirius is important to James.
Hey,
Sirius looks concerned, stepping towards the bed again.
should I get Pomfrey? You look...
It's okay.
James offers a tight smile.
Really?
Sirius keeps standing there looking unconvinced.
Alright.
He passes a hand over his face.
Merlin, don't do this again.
Get hit in the head with a bludger? Wasn't planning to.
Bludger, fist, badger. If I ever see you bleed again, it'll be too soon.
You're going soft, Black.
He nudges Sirius with his foot. The other boy smiles, and it feels good to see.
Don't go spreading that around. It'll be bad for my rep. As far as anybody knows, I'm a selfish, heartless, gorgeous bastard.
That's going on your tombstone.
Sirius grins.
It better be.
Mr. Black!
Yes, I'm going!
He sends James an exasperated look.
We'll be back first thing, yeah? Whether the old bat likes it or not.
As long as you bring food with you.
Well, obviously. We're not savages.
He tosses James a cheeky wink before slipping through the curtains. James leans back against his pillows, closing his eyes and trying not to think about the fact that Sirius heard him call out Reg's name, about how close that was, about how he wishes it was closer. He doesn't want to go to sleep. Partially because he's only just getting his bearings back, and partially because he's not at all excited about what awaits him on the insides of his eyelids. The wolf, the dog, the blood. Over and over again he sees it. He hears it. He hopes it won't be this bad for Sirius. Hopes he doesn't start dreaming about phantom Quidditch games. He doesn't remember screaming, but then he doesn't remember much. He knows there was blood. His eyes open at the sound of footsteps and ruffling fabric, and he finds Pomfrey at his bedside. She smiles at him, and he realizes suddenly that the lights have been put out, the space lit now only by her wand.
I'm leaving these here for you if you need them.
She points to 2 vials on the table beside his bed.
This one is a pain potion, and this one is dreamless sleep. There's 1 dose of each measured out here, so drink the whole thing. If you need me, just tap your wand twice. Now, is there anything else I can get you?
She looks at him expectantly, a formidable but not unkind expression on her face.
3 weeks.
Yes, more if you keep bugging me.
She pauses to send him a look that is all his mother.
Your body needs time, James. Quidditch will still be there when you're ready.
Not if we keep losing.
Anything else?
No.
He can see her trying not to smile at his pouting, moving towards the curtains again, but stopping before going all the way through.
Lucky James.
He blinks at the sudden seriousness of her voice.
That was a bad hit, and it could have gone very differently.
Yeah, I know.
For all that boy's apologising, you'd think he'd mention that he's the one who caught you.
That takes James by surprise, and he has to stop himself from sitting up again.
Sirius caught me.
She looks back at him over her shoulder, expression soft.
Minerva was slowing you down already, of course. I'm not sure if you could see that. Still, Mr. Black made sure you never hit the ground. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone fly so fast.
James's chest suddenly feels too tight. Idiot, he thinks, because catching someone is exactly what you're not supposed to do. It's dangerous. It can throw you both off. You wait for the referees. You wait for the professors. You don't put yourself in danger too. Unless you're Sirius Black, of course, and then that's exactly what you do. The self-sacrificing asshole. He's pretty sure Sirius is the most Gryffindor person he's ever met.
Thanks.
He wants desperately to be back in his room with his boys.
Thanks for telling me that. He never would have.
Figured as much. Sleep now, James, okay?
Yeah, alright, Poppy.
She rolls her eyes, pulling the curtain back and walking off towards her office. He's able to hold off for all of 5 minutes before he starts guzzling the pain potion like it's water. He's not thrilled at the idea of being any more fuzzy and muddled than he already is, but the headache is getting unbearable. It takes a moment for the potion to set in, leaking through his body, warm and soft. It feels good. Like really, really good. James sighs, smiling into his pillow. The weight in his head lightens, taking with it the pain and dulling everything else. The fear, the anxiety, the stress. It feels like floating. He doesn't remember closing his eyes, but he must have. He's not asleep, though, just drifting. Which is why the first indication he has that anyone has entered the hospital wing is the soft feeling of fingers cutting through his hair. In the grey light of the windows, he can make out Regulus standing at his bedside, hand caressing him, carefully, delicately, like he's something to be cherished. That thought makes James warm inside.
I can't tell if this is a dream or not.
Regulus jumps back in surprise.
No. Come back. That felt nice.
Regulus blinks, eyes going to the bedside table and then back to James.
Pain potion?
James holds out his hands and beckons for Regulus to continue his ministrations, but the other boy doesn't move.
You're okay then?
James is still reaching for Regulus.
Right now, I am very okay.
Regulus finally moves closer to the bed again. Once he's near enough, James grabs hold of his hand and places it back in his hair.
You're a child, you know that.
Sure. More stroking.
He dutifully starts moving his hand again. It takes James much longer than it normally would to come to the obvious question. He cracks his eyes open, looking at the boy standing over him.
You're here.
Astute as ever, Potter.
No. No more pottering, please.
Regulus bites back a smile.
It's your name.
My name is James. You call me James all the time.
I'll call you James occasionally.
We'll do it more.
You're awfully bossy when you're high. Do you know that?
Please. I'm bossy all the time.
Maybe.
His hand stills in James's hair and he's about to start complaining when the hand slides down to cup his face. The touch so light, James is barely sure it's even there. Regulus lets out a shaky breath.
You're okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Hey.
James pulls on Reg's sleeve.
I am, you know. You don't have to sound so...
Don't.
And even James's drug-addled brain is struck by the way that word comes out. And he can just see him struggling the way he always does when the part of him that wants to keep everything sealed off fights with the rest of him. James waits for Regulus to say more, but he doesn't. Instead, he leans down and presses into James's mouth. He doesn't think he's ever been kissed like this before. Soft and desperate at the same time. It goes on for a while before Regulus pulls away, resting his forehead against James's.
I hate you. You know that?
Yeah, tastes like it. Hey, you distracted me.
Distracted you from what?
You're here.
We've established that.
James rolls his eyes.
Yeah, but how... Pumphrey's like right there.
He gestures beyond the curtains. Regulus looks a little smug.
You think you and my brother are the only people who know how to sneak around?
No, but...
He snaps his mouth shut, unsure of whether or not he should tell Regulus about the map or the cloak.
I'm good at disillusionment charms.
Of course you are.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Come here.
He pulls hard on Regulus's arm, forcing him to have to brace himself on the bed. One hand by James's shoulder, one knee on the edge of the mattress.
Merlin, James, will you... Be careful! You just had your skull cracked open. God, stop pulling on me.
James only smiles, tugging Regulus further onto the bed.
I'm not going to...
Just lie with me for a bit. That's it, Reg.
Oh, that's it, Reg.
Regulus is practically on all fours now, hovering over James.
Pomfrey could come by at any time.
Yeah, but you're good at disillusionment charms.
Regulus rolls his eyes.
I can't make myself bloody invisible.
I'll distract her. I'm very distracting.
I've noticed.
Have you?
When Regulus continues to hold himself apart, James drops his hands, worry breaking through the potion.
Is this okay?
The world is so fuzzy right now that he's not sure that he can read Regulus as well as he usually does. The younger boy carefully fits himself beside James.
Reg.
It's okay, James. Stupid and reckless, but okay.
Smiling, James wraps his arm around him, pulling him into his chest, burying his nose in his hair.
I'm glad you came.
He feels Regulus exhale against his chest.
Go to sleep, James.
James is allowed to go back to the dorm room after 2 days, but not without some conditions.
You are to stay in bed until I say so. Do you understand?
Perfectly.
James?
Listen, I am famously very good at doing what I'm told.
I'm friends with the portraits.
Don't worry, Poppy. This is a judgment-free zone. Though you may want to try getting out a bit more.
If you move, I will know. So if you ever want to get on a broomstick again, I suggest you listen to me.
Which James thinks is entirely unfair and certainly an abuse of power, but since neither McGonagall nor Dumbledore agree with him, he finds himself confined to his bedroom, which is made infinitely worse when Remus starts bringing him his coursework.
But I'm injured. I'm supposed to be resting. Isn't that what you all keep saying? How am I supposed to rest and write an essay on the 7 uses of unicorn hair? Those 2 activities are completely incompatible. What, is Slughorn trying to kill me?
James.
Remus collapses onto his bed.
I will literally pay you to shut up.
I'm just saying.
James.
He glares at Remus, then glares at his coursework.
Can't believe Pumphrey won't let me leave this fucking room, but he's still going to make me.
His rant is cut short by the pillow that collides with his face, which if Remus thinks is going to shut him up, he has another thing coming, because now James has a whole new rant about respecting the delicacy of his newly mended head. Except, when he looks over, Remus has curled onto his side, burying his face in his blankets.
Moody? You okay over there?
Just having a bad day.
James's eyes automatically go to the window, even though he knows the full moon is still 2 weeks off.
You want to talk about it?
No. I just want to wallow, if that's okay.
Sure, Moons. Whatever you want.
Remus doesn't emerge until it's time for him to go down to the Great Hall for supper. James, of course, doesn't get to go to the Great Hall for his meals, but instead has to have them brought to him via house elf. Remus is nearly out the door when James catches him.
Remus? If you want to talk at some point, at any point, I'm here.
Remus, James realises for the first time, looks exhausted.
Sure, Prongs. Thanks.
He gives James a weak smile before disappearing down the stairs. That's the first time James notices something is wrong. The second time is when Sirius is doing his homework. It's not that Sirius doesn't do his work. He does. Just usually he does it in a rush moments before it's due. James once watched him pen out a 4-foot essay on the mating habits of the hodag in the 15 minutes it took them to walk to class. He's good enough that he passes, even with his illegible handwriting. Sirius's greatest strength has always been his ability to improvise. So it's strange to watch him sit on the floor of their bedroom, books open in front of him, silently scribbling notes in a timely fashion. James can't take the silence anymore.
Everything all right?
What?
You seem a little tense.
He can see Sirius's eyes still, no longer skating across the pages of text.
Nah, I'm good.
James watches him, expression stern, shoulders inching up his neck as he starts writing again.
Okay, mate.
James forces himself to focus on his own work.
I'm just wondering if you've noticed anything.
James watches Peter scramble around the room, desperately trying to find his wand. He misplaces it at least once a day.
Like what?
Peter gets on his hands and knees and starts rooting around under his bed.
I don't know. Just, are they fighting? I feel like maybe they're fighting.
More than usual.
Peter wipes the sweat off his forehead as he stands back up, still wandless.
I swear I just had it.
Accio Peter's wand.
Both boys turn towards the closed bathroom door.
I swear I checked there.
Peter walks over and opens the door, grabbing the wand out of the air on its way to James.
What do you mean, more than usual?
What?
James's patience these days is at an all-time low. It's the captivity. It's no good for him. So it takes an incredible amount of effort not to snap at Peter. But he knows that wouldn't end well. When he gets snippy with Remus or Sirius, they give it right back. But Peter? Peter just shuts down.
Remus and Sirius, I asked if they were fighting and you asked more than usual. What does that mean?
He gestures impatiently. Peter shrugs.
I don't know. They fight. We'll fight.
What? We don't fight.
Peter looks at him curiously for a minute before shaking his head.
Sometimes I feel like we're in completely different friend groups.
What is that supposed to mean?
Look, I gotta go. If I'm late for Transfiguration again, McGonagall is going to turn me into a chicken.
Peter shivers at the thought, shoving his wand in his back pocket and grabbing the books off his bed.
But what? Pete! Damn it.
James collapses back onto his bed as the door closes behind his friend. James is pacing in front of the window when Marlene walks in, both of them stopping dead in their tracks, staring.
Brought these for you.
She holds up a stack of parchment that can only be more homework.
How did you even get up here?
He grabs the work from her sulkily and chucks it onto his bed with the half-dozen other assignments he's currently ignoring. Marlene arches her brow.
I walked?
Isn't there like an enchantment or something? You know, keeping us out of each other's dorms.
Only on the girls. Protect our virtue or something.
Well, what about my virtue?
Guess the founders figured that was a lost cause.
Presumptuous bastards.
I can't believe you didn't know this. Aren't you guys supposed to know all the castle secrets? Isn't that like your whole thing?
She gestures around the room.
Our thing? I didn't realise we had a thing. Also, how would we know this?
You could read Hogwarts a history?
James looks at her flatly.
I repeat, how would we know this?
Okay, fair point. I mean, you're telling me you've never tried to sneak a girl or... Shit, never mind, that was...
James rolls his eyes, waving off her words and leaning against the wall next to the window.
Believe it or not, the idea of hooking up with a girl while my 3 mates listen in has never sounded that appealing to me.
Marlene blinks at him a few times before pulling herself back together.
You're telling me that Sirius Black has never brought a girl back to his room?
We're broom cupboard men, us.
Classy.
James nods, looking out the window, trying to work through the nagging feeling now taking up space in his gut. James shoots her a sidelong look, heart suddenly hammering against his ribs.
It's only him, really.
There's a pause. James's eyes following the tiny students rushing towards the greenhouse below them to distract himself from the buzzing in his ears. Eventually, Marlene moves forward and leans on the wall across from him.
Okay.
He looks over at her.
Yeah?
Yeah. James, of course.
James's eyes go back to the window.
They still don't know, I gather?
He doesn't want anyone to know.
And what do you want?
James passes a hand over his face.
I have no idea, honestly. Even if I could, I don't know that I...
His eyes go subconsciously over his shoulder to Sirius's bed.
Well, I'm pretty sure Remus would be okay with it.
James can feel the confusion on his face.
Why?
She looks at him expectantly, but continues to get nothing in return.
Honestly, you lot are a mess, aren't you?
Oi, we do all right.
Uh-huh.
I don't appreciate the judgmental tone, McKinnon.
I'm just saying. I think if you did, if you told them, it'd be all right.
James's chest squeezes.
Remus, maybe. Pete, honestly, I couldn't tell you. But Sirius will never forgive me for this night. Fuck, Ma. I don't know if I can bear that. Him hating me.
James, you should have seen him after you got hit.
Something in her voice makes him look up.
I mean, I knew you two were close, but he was wrecked, James. I'm pretty sure if me and Alice hadn't held him back, he would have killed Bones.
I'd have done the same if it was him.
I don't think he could ever hate you.
But it's not just... He's not just a boy.
James fights the way saying that out loud makes part of him squirm, wants to shy away from it. He isn't ashamed. He won't be.
It's his brother.
Marlene grimaces.
Yeah. I have to admit that part's throwing me off a bit too.
He's not...
An asshole?
He restlessly fidgets against the wall, crossing and uncrossing his arms.
You know, until a week ago, one of your best mates thought I was an arsehole.
Yeah, that's not the same.
isn't it?
And suddenly she's too serious for James's liking.
There are different levels of bad, James. You've been obnoxious, sure, you've lacked self-awareness, but you've never been cruel.
Regulus isn't cruel.
Marlene looks back at him unconvinced, pitying even.
Listen, I've had this conversation too many times with Lily about Snape. I don't want to do it again. I'm saying that just because someone can be good sometimes to some people doesn't mean that they're a good person.
James feels like someone's just slapped him.
This isn't... Reg is not Snape. He's nothing like Snape.
The very idea makes bile crawl up the back of his throat. He can see Marlene chewing on the inside of her cheek.
Maybe. I don't really know him. But do you think Snape can't be redeemable when he wants to be? That Lily would have held on to him for so long if he couldn't sometimes be a decent human being.
Marlene, I'm telling you, they're different. They are.
Even as he says it, he can see Regulus sitting with Rosier and Crouch, cold eyes and sharp mouth. Can see him sneering at first years in the corridor. Can see Sirius alone on his doorstep.
You're really into him, aren't you?
Marlene's words pull him out of his thoughts. He can't look at her, feeling sick for the first time since leaving the hospital wing. When he doesn't answer, he hears Marlene exhale, shifting a little against the wall.
Stupid question, that. Since when is anything ever casual with you?
James feels like his chest has started to cave in on itself.
Regulus isn't Snape. I can see how maybe it looks that way from the outside. But it isn't the same.
It can't be, whispers the voice in his head. It can't be because I'm absolutely mad for him, this boy. He makes it feel like the sun rises in my chest.
Okay. I believe you. You'd know better than me.
And then a small smile pulls at her mouth.
It means something, you know, that he has you. Maybe it'll make a difference. Like with Sirius.
I didn't do anything for Sirius.
She shakes her head, bemused expression on her face.
Yeah, James. Yeah, you did. You gave him a way out.
James thinks about Regulus, back on that first night in the tower. I'm not my brother, he'd said. You can't save me. James feels those words more now than he did the first time. They bruise. Due to the mandatory bed rest and also his tendency to get dizzy when he's on his feet for too long, James hasn't seen Regulus since the hospital wing, which, if he's being honest, is having more of an effect on him than he would have thought. Besides the fact that he's found himself watching Regulus's name on the map almost constantly, which he can freely admit to himself is both creepy and pathetic. He's been dreaming about him. Sometimes they're nightmares, in the woods, in the dark. But sometimes there's something else. Something with hands and mouths and a heat that whips through James like nothing he's ever felt before. He wakes up hot and panting and wanting. These days he feels like that's all he does. Want. He hasn't forgotten his conversation with Sirius in the hospital wing. Hasn't forgotten what Sirius heard. These days he casts a quietus charm over his bed before he goes to sleep. There's a new fidgety energy that sits under his skin. He can't sit still. He paces. He plays with his snitch. He throws crumpled balls of parchment across the room. He thinks and thinks and thinks. He thinks so much he's certain he's going mad. Mostly he thinks about grey eyes and thick dark hair and a mouth that says, I bite, and he wants. It's a few days after his talk with Marlene that Remus walks into their room to find James and Sirius sitting in the window and then promptly walks back out. At which point James decides that he can't ignore the situation anymore.
Okay, what did you do to Mooney?
Sirius didn't look up when the door opened or closed, eyes trained on the overcast skies, sporadic raindrops splattering the glass.
You're not making any sense, Prongs. Think maybe that bludger messed you up a bit.
James watches him for a minute, the picture of melancholy, before reaching over and punching him hard in the arm.
Oi! What the hell?
Sirius clutches his arm and kicks James in retaliation.
Hey, I'm injured.
Don't start fights you can't finish, Potter.
Kicking him once more for good measure.
What's going on with you and Remus?
James kicks back.
Nothing.
Bullshit.
Sirius throws his hands in the air.
I don't know. He's miffed with me. He's always miffed with me. I don't know what his problem is.
Wow. You're a really shit liar, you know that?
Sirius glares, getting up dramatically and moving to his bed, crossing his arms over his chest as he sits against the headboard.
Are you sulking now?
Maybe. Is that a problem for you?
Yes. I tried to leave it alone, but it's been days now and the two of you are both in crap moods and won't even be in the same room as each other. So since you're clearly incapable of pulling your head out of your arse, you're going to tell me what happened so I can fix it.
You can't fix everything, James.
Watch me.
When Sirius does nothing but sit there, glaring, James gets up and moves to his bedside, picking up Peter's pillow as he goes. Sirius's eyes widen.
Don't you fucking dare, James.
Then tell me what's happened.
Put that down or I swear I will crucio you.
You wish.
James?
Sirius scrambles to the other side of the bed as James swings for his head.
Oh, you wanker!
Sirius rolls onto the floor. He grabs hold of his own pillow and hurls it at James.
I wouldn't have to be if you would stop lying to me.
James lunges across the bed at the same time that Sirius makes a run for the other side, so they end up chasing one another in a circle, with James ending up on the Sirius's side and Sirius on James's.
Bit rich coming from you.
Sirius snatches the pillow off of Remus's bed and launches it across the room. James ducks.
What?
Where do you go every night, James? Huh? You take the map so there's no way to check? You disappear for bloody hours? What the hell are you doing?
James stands there, pillow forgotten in his hand.
Oh, come on. Did you really think we wouldn't notice?
James's body has gone so stiff that he feels like he might crack open, a horrible, foreboding feeling washing over him.
You didn't say.
Mooney thought we should leave it alone, that you'd come to us if you needed to.
He's sneering, but James thinks he can just make out the hurt on the ends of his words. He thinks about how he felt, finding out about Sirius's father from Regulus.
It's been weeks now. So what is it, James? What are you hiding from us?
Nothing.
Ha! Who's the fucking liar now?
Shit, is all James can think.
I asked you first.
A look passes over Sirius's face that he's not sure he's ever seen before. Or if he has, it's never been directed at him.
When did you stop trusting me?
The room feels too quiet and too hot, and James doesn't know how they got here, but he hates it.
That's not fair. That's not what's happening here.
That's why you lie, James. You lie because you don't trust someone with the truth.
It's a fight for him not to flinch, those words carving their way through his skin. Because that's the truth, isn't it? When all is said and done, he doesn't trust Sirius with this.
Is that why you lie to me?
I don't trust anyone. It's not the same.
Isn't it?
No, because you trust everyone. You always have. So when did you stop trusting me?
James doesn't have an answer for that. Or maybe he just doesn't want to.
I trust you, Sirius. I trust you with everything.
But not this.
James fights everything that swells up inside him at the way those words sound in Sirius's mouth.
There's no this. I can't sleep. I wander around the castle. That's it.
Right, well, you go for late night walks, me and Mooney are completely fine. That's how we're playing this?
James shrugs helplessly.
Great. Excellent. Glad we had this talk. Feel loads better now. Cheers.
Sirius throws the door open. James flinches when it closes behind him. Pomfrey officially takes him off of bed rest.
No Quidditch. Not for another 2 weeks, at least.
James doesn't bother trying to fight her. Sirius and Remus start warming up to each other again. Or, at least they can be in the same room now, which James supposes is an improvement. They don't really talk, though. In fact, none of them really talk. There's no attempt by him or Sirius to bring up the fight they had. They just move on. That's how they've always dealt with things, or not dealt with things, depending on your perspective. It feels different this time, though. Like there's something heavy sitting on James's chest every time he thinks about it.
I'm just saying.
You can just say all you want. You're still wrong.
The clean sweeps are lighter, more aerodynamic.
Aerodynamic? Please.
I'd take the oldest Nimbus model over the newest clean sweep any day.
Well, that's because you've been completely brainwashed.
Oh, have I?
Mindless brand loyalty.
Yeah, whatever you say.
It's late in the day. The sun is warm but getting low in the sky. James swears it's dark by supper these days.
Hey, do you have the notes from Muggle Studies?
You know I don't. I'm just going to nick them off of Mooney.
Sirius's expression tightens, but he nods his head.
Right. Good plan.
They're walking back from potions. Slughorn kept them late in an attempt to once again woo them into joining his dinner parties. They, of course, refused, but it means the corridors are mostly empty, everyone else already done with classes for the day.
Merlin, I can't believe you just called the clean sweeps aerodynamic.
Oh, whatever, you snob. You just like the Nimbus line because it's posher.
I hope you appreciate the irony of you calling anyone posh, Mr. I took ballet until I was 9.
It was ballroom, actually.
Oh, well. In that case, that's well rough.
Sirius tries to trip him but only partially succeeds, which mostly ends up with the pair of them jostling down the hallway.
Like you're any different. You know, most people don't have a whole bloody Quidditch pitch in their back garden, right?
It's not a full Quidditch pitch, it's only a...
They round the corner and James feels his words suck themselves back down his throat as he comes face to face with a pair of wide grey eyes. Of course, the shock on Regulus's face only lasts for about a second before he slides his mask of casual dislike into place, gaze quickly shifting from James to Sirius.
Sirius.
Regulus.
James says nothing. He figures that's probably what's expected of him, which is good because his heart has rammed itself so far up his throat he's not sure he can manage speaking right now.
Well, as fun as this is, we've got to go, so...
Sirius looks at James, who nods as they start walking again. Sirius making a bit of a show of walking around Regulus, who is still standing there. All in all, James thinks it's not so bad. A little awkward, but it could have been...
He asks about you, you know.
Sirius freezes. James looks over at him and silently begs him to just walk away. But Sirius's eyes have gone dark, and James knows, even before his friend starts to turn around, that there's no getting out of this now. Fuck.
That's interesting, since he never seemed to care much about me when I was around.
James cringes. Their father, he thinks, looking between the two brothers. They're talking about their father.
Nobody does the right thing all the time, Sirius. People make mistakes.
Ha! Mistakes? Is that what you think they're making? Come on, little brother. They're smarter than that.
Sirius leers, stepping closer. James follows behind in case he has to stop them from killing each other. Both of them burn cold. When they get angry, they don't yell or bluster. They turn their smiles into knives and carve you into pieces. It's fucking terrifying to watch.
In order for something to be a mistake, you have to feel guilty about it.
You know that he's...
Being sick doesn't make you a good person.
There are no good people. There are just people. That's it. This isn't a fairy tale.
Is that how you do it? How you live with yourself?
Sirius is now far too close for James's comfort. Regulus doesn't respond. Hands curled and fists at his sides, but at least he's not reaching for his wand.
You're right, Reg.
Neither of them are looking away. Not for a second.
Nobody can do the right thing all the time. But the problem with you lot is you don't even try.
His eyes trail over his brother in mild disgust.
What exactly makes you think you're any different? What great injustice are you righting, Sirius? All you've done is run away, like a coward.
James steps forward, hand taking hold of Sirius's arm to keep him from lunging.
You think you're some kind of hero? You think you've accomplished something the night you left? Because to me, it just looks like you're doing what you've always done, which is look out for your fucking self.
Sirius jolts forward, James yanking him back as Regulus pulls out his wand.
Hey, enough!
James pins both of Sirius's arms behind his back to keep him from reaching for his own wand. Regulus isn't looking at James, eyes intent on his brother.
I said enough!
Sirius is struggling against his grip, trying to throw his elbows back into James's stomach so he can get himself free. James grunts as Sirius lands a well-aimed kick to his shin, feeling his grip start to slip.
Fuck, Regulus.
You really want to call me a coward, Reg? You let her use you as a fucking rug if you thought it would make her love you. It's pathetic.
James sees it. Just barely. The switch in Reg's grip, the look in his eyes. He throws them against the wall just as the curse shoots out of Regulus's wand.
You fucking psycho!
James barely keeps his grip on Sirius as he holds him against the wall.
Regulus, put the fucking wand down!
Regulus looks at James for the first time, and James feels the air empty out of his lungs. He doesn't know that face. He doesn't know those eyes. They certainly aren't the same ones that snuck to his bedside in the hospital wing and held him like it meant something. It takes a few more seconds before Regulus puts his wand back in his pocket, eyes returning to his still struggling brother.
You're a disgrace.
Regulus picks up the books he dropped in the scuffle and turns his back on them.
Oh, fuck you, Reg.
Regulus disappears around the corner. James's mouth feels dry.
Prongs... Merlin, let me go, you prick.
Shit, sorry.
Sirius stumbles forward out of his grasp, both of them breathing heavily. Sirius glares at the place where his brother disappeared, James doing his best to get the look on Regulus's face out of his head. Finally, Sirius rounds on him.
What the hell was that?
What?
James feels off balance, like he can't quite get a grip on the world around him. Sirius gestures emphatically at the spot where Regulus had been standing.
Since when do you protect him?
I didn't protect him.
You held me back.
He had his fucking wand out. If you took a swing, he was going to hex your bloody arms off.
I would have drawn mine first if you hadn't already been pulling me away.
So what, Sirius? Are we supposed to just stand back and watch you kill each other?
No, you were supposed to fucking help me. You were supposed to have my back.
2 against 1's not exactly fair.
Nothing is fair. What about any of this seems fair to you?
Well, now you sound just like him.
That catches Sirius off guard. Catches James off guard too, if he's being honest. Sirius physically steps back and James feels his stomach lurch. He expects more shouting, but there isn't any. After a few minutes, Sirius brings his hands up to his face. The hallway feels too big all of a sudden. Too quiet.
He just makes me so fucking angry sometimes. I hate that he's like that. That he defends them. That he plays their games. And I used to feel like I knew that he didn't really think it was okay. Any of the stuff they say, or... Fuck, I don't know anymore. Maybe he does. Because he won't fight it. Won't stand up for himself. Won't stand up for anything. It drives me nuts.
James feels suddenly exhausted. Head swimming in a way he decides to blame on the bludger instead of Reg. He's not sure what to say. What to do.
Listen, don't bite my head off for this, yeah?
Strong start.
Have you tried talking to him? I mean, actually talking to him. Not just shouting insults at each other or whatever that was.
He waves vaguely at the empty hallway around them.
Talking to him outside of that house.
Sirius stiffens at the mention of Grimold Place.
You can't talk to him. He's a wall. It's all family and duty, and when I try to ask him what he actually thinks, he just shrugs me off. Like it's not important. Like thinking isn't important. Which is what they want, you know. Fucking mindless zombies who will do whatever they say. I could never do that. Could never hollow myself out the way he could.
It takes a lot of work for James to hold himself still, to keep from flinching. He thinks of Regulus up in the tower, talking about having to hide parts of himself away. How it made things easier, and he wonders how much of himself he puts in boxes.
Maybe if he knew he had somewhere he could go.
Sirius's eyes snap up and James tries to look casual.
My mum, this summer, she said something. Well, she said she was going to try and get him out of there.
Regulus.
You know her. She's got to save everyone.
It's a moment before Sirius nods.
Yeah, you like her that way.
James doesn't know why that aches.
Bloody annoying, I expect.
He offers Sirius a weak smile that his friend returns.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, saved me, so can't really complain.
Please. You're serious, Black. You saved yourself.
Oh, fuck off, James. Stop trying to make me cry in the middle of the bloody corridor.
Told you, Black. You're going soft.
Yeah, like you aren't a bleeding fucking heart.
Merlin,
They start walking slowly in the direction of the common room.
We're turning into Hufflepuffs.
Sirius gives him a look of outrage.
Bite your tongue.
He doesn't know whether to go to the tower or not. After what happened. After finding out that the others know. He lays in his bed, staring up at the canopy, tapping his fingers anxiously on his stomach. But eventually he gets up. Of course he does, taking the map and looking nervously at Sirius's bed before slipping out the door. He's more cautious this time, constantly checking his surroundings. Not for Filch, but for his friends. It's only a matter of time, really. Sirius won't be able to let this go forever. Honestly, he's kind of impressed Sirius hasn't already tried to follow him. If it had been the other way around, James is pretty sure he'd have done it on the second night. He expects he has Moony to thank for Sirius's restraint. When he finally makes it outside, Regulus is waiting for him, sitting facing the door, no telescope, hands clasped between his knees. He doesn't look remorseful. He just looks determined. His eyes meet James's, and for a moment they just stand there, facing one another, and James can't help but feel like they've been here before.
I don't get his attention often.
And that's what you decided to do with it.
It's complicated.
You was walking away. You could have just...
Yep, but do you see? That's what he always does. Walks away.
Don't. Really don't, Reg. Because I'm not going to stand here and listen to you act like he didn't have every right to walk out of that fucking house.
James feels himself shake with the weight of his anger. Regulus's eyes narrow.
Right. Of course. You're on his side.
I don't know how to be on your side.
James is still standing so far away, and part of him hates that, because it's been a week. A week of dreaming and wanting, and he's tired of fighting. He feels like all he's been doing lately is fighting with the people he cares about. It's exhausting.
I don't even know what your side is.
There are a lot of words in Regulus's stare that he wishes the other boy would say out loud. But in the end, all James gets is...
No. No, I'm not sure I do either.
Reg.
When he doesn't speak again, James finally makes himself step forward, crouching in front of Regulus, hands on his calves. He waits for the other boy to look up, but instead, after several moments of tense silence, Regulus leans forward, resting his forehead against James's.
We shouldn't have done this. I'm usually better at not...
Regulus doesn't pull away. James can't see his face, but he can feel his heat, the weight of him. It's settling.
Better at what?
Not taking stupid risks.
Can't say I relate.
No, I'm sure you can't.
They stay like that for a while, pressed together, James listening as Regulus takes deep, even breaths, like he's trying to calm himself down.
Reg, come home with me.
Regulus pulls back so fast James nearly falls into his lap.
What?
Don't go back there. Don't go back to them.
James can't read the expression on Regulus's face. Shock? Fear? Anger? Maybe all three.
I can't.
You can.
James feels desperate.
You can. My mum, she wanted to come get you last summer, after Sirius showed up.
I know.
And something in his tone makes James's breath catch.
You know? How?
My father might not work at the Ministry anymore, but he still has friends. When Dumbledore started asking around, it got back to them.
And your parents told you?
Regulus imperfectly suppresses a grimace.
In a manner of speaking.
James doesn't like the way that sounds at all.
Did they threaten you?
He's met with a blank stare, and James starts to feel the return of the shaking anger in his bones.
They did more than threaten you?
Leave it, James. They just wanted to make sure that I didn't know anything about it. That I wasn't involved. And I wasn't, so...
Reg, come home with me.
I can't. I'm not leaving my father.
James opens his mouth to try again, but Regulus pushes away from him before he can, getting to his feet.
I told you not to try and save me, James.
God, you and your brother are so melodramatic.
James stands up now too, levelling Regulus with a look.
You're not a lost cause, Regulus. You're not.
That seems to take the younger boy by surprise, and James watches him fight with himself. watches him chew up the words as they try to escape his mouth.
Not everyone can be a hero.
There aren't any heroes, remember? You said that. No heroes, no villains, just people.
They stare at one another, and James can see his jaw clenching, muscles shifting beneath his skin.
It's harder to believe that standing next to you.
I'm not a hero, Reg.
But the younger boy only smiles, quiet and sad.
See, I think you might be, though. Sometimes, James, you shine so fucking bright, I feel like I'm going to burn up.
Those words sink somewhere deep inside him. He wants and wants and wants.
My whole life, everything has always been so cold. And then you started focusing it on me, and I could feel it. Feel you watching me. Feel you in my head, in my sleep. You take up so much space. You make everything so full, and it's intoxicating. Just being around you, having all that power focused on me. I meant what I said, James. On the Quidditch pitch. I don't want to break you. But I will. If you let me, I will. Because I'm not serious. There's something in me, and it's rotten, and
James steps forward, closing the space between them, but not touching, not yet, just holding his hand out. A question. After a moment of hesitation, Regulus nods, and James brings his hands to his face, holding it carefully, tilting his chin so that those grey eyes meet his.
I don't know who or what made you give up on yourself, Regulus, but I need you to stop.
James.
You are worth saving.
James bends down and kisses him, soft and gentle, not pushing, but taking whatever it is that Regulus is willing to give him. He feels the other boy's hands curl up in his shirt. He doesn't remember backing them up, but suddenly James is pressing Regulus into the castle wall, pulling another noise out of him that vibrates through his chest. They push together, every inch of them touching, Regulus bleeding into him. Cold hands slip under James's shirt, running up his back, his chest, electric currents rushing through him.
The sun.
They break apart, still pressed together, foreheads resting against one another.
What?
That's what I thought.
James pulls back just enough to see Regulus's eyes.
The first time you kissed me, I thought, he touches like the sun. You think I'm bright, Reg? You, when you let yourself, shine so fucking bright.
A pained look crosses Regulus's face, and James is about to ask why when Reg leans forward, kissing harder. His teeth bite at James's lower lip before pushing deeper, taking his mouth. This kiss is all-encompassing. He feels Reg, and tastes him, and smells him. He wants, and wants, and wants. Hands start to play with the waistband of his pants.
Reg.
He hums into it, which, that is not at all articulating the things he's trying to say, but it's hard to concentrate. Regulus's mouth finds its way along his jaw, down his neck, and the fire that sparks in the pit of James's stomach is almost unbearable. His hands fall against the wall on either side of Regulus's head, bracketing him in, keeping James standing as Regulus's hands keep moving. Part of James's brain, the loud part, screams. Yes. Yes, this. Please. More. But the other part, the quieter part, says, careful. Be careful. Be careful with him. Which seems ridiculous since Regulus is 100% the one in control, and yet...
Maybe we should...
Regulus presses his hand against him, and all James sees is white, dropping his head into the crook of Regulus's neck.
Fuck.
Reg starts a slow rhythm that James is almost positive is going to take him apart stitch by stitch.
That's the idea.
But something isn't quite right. Regulus presses down with his thumb, and James can't keep back the groan that tears out of his throat.
Reg, we can't do this.
We can.
And somehow they're kissing again, his mouth hot and sweet. James has kissed other people, but never like this. Never so desperately. He pulls one of his hands off the wall, bringing it to the back of Regulus's neck. And that's when he feels it.
Regulus, hey.
He pulls back slightly, trying to get a better look at Regulus's face. They're both breathing heavily. The tops of Regulus's cheeks flushed in a way that James has never seen and doesn't think he will ever forget.
Regulus, you're shaking.
It happens.
It happens.
It'll stop eventually.
And James has no idea what any of that means. But Regulus is clearly not interested in letting him figure it out because his hands stop moving again, grip tightening in a way that makes James choke.
Fuck your soap.
He doesn't know how to finish that sentence, trying desperately to keep himself together.
Regulus, you can't just do this because you don't want to talk.
You're the one who kissed me, remember?
His hand stills, thumb making maddening circles that send shocks through James's whole body. He wants to scream. And other things. God, so many other things.
I have terrible impulse control, but I don't think you want this.
He can feel it. Feel it the way he always does. The tension under Regulus's skin. Like fear, but not quite. Regulus presses his thumb down one more time, making James whimper before he starts moving his hand again, faster now. James's eyes close, every fibre of his being begging him to lean into it, to sink into Regulus's body, but instead he puts his hands on Regulus's shoulders and pushes back. Regulus looks up at him surprised.
I'm not doing this way.
Regulus's expression goes from surprised to annoyed in no time.
What way?
We're fighting.
Are we?
James groans, still struggling to think straight while looking at Regulus's mouth. Red and wet and so fucking close.
With something.
Oh, well, in that case.
Regulus pulls himself out from under James's hands and walks away. James feels his bones ache at the loss.
You know what I mean.
I assure you I don't. And put your dick away, Potter, if you expect me to take you seriously.
James rolls his eyes, doing up his trousers with fumbling hands.
We haven't fixed anything, and you were shaking.
People shake during sex. I'm not sure how limited your...
Don't be an arse, Reg. I know the difference.
Regulus just stands there, the defiant look back on his face, hands and fists at his sides.
I didn't say no.
You didn't say yes.
Oh, fuck you and your honourable bullshit. So what? What does it matter?
It matters, Reg.
James wants to go to him, but he doesn't, holding himself back, watching as Regulus tries desperately to close himself off. He looks at James like he wants him to understand, and James wishes that he did, that whatever it is that Regulus is desperate not to have to explain, he didn't have to.
This is what we get. There's no other way, James. It's always going to be like this. And I want you. I want you, and I can have you like this. You're mine here, not his. And I want you.
James tries to pick that apart, only understanding half of it.
There's more? You want me, but you don't? Because you didn't.
It's complicated. I can't...
You don't have to explain.
I really should. But it's nice that you don't think so.
Reg, first night I was up here. Do you remember what I said?
I remember all of it.
The words seem to come out of him without his permission. A surprisingly sweet confession, and James tries not to get distracted by it.
I told you that I didn't want to take anything from you. I meant that, Reg. I mean that.
You... How are you like this?
James lets himself smile a little.
No one's fucked me up yet. Or at least that's what I've been told.
Regulus stares at James for a long time before looking away.
What if I want to take from you?
Okay.
It's not.
More than most people, I think. You can take it if you want. I'll let you have whatever you want, Reg.
Regulus shakes his head, turning away from James and walking over to the railing, looking out over the night. James wants to follow, desperately, but he doesn't.
Most people don't notice.
Don't notice?
He can't see Regulus's face, so for the next few moments of silence he really has no idea what's happening.
I always kind of shut down a bit. Defense mechanism, I think. Not that there's been that many people, mind you, but none of them seem to Or I guess they didn't care.
He says all that like it's nothing to him, like he's describing the weather. James's chest feels tight. He wants to set the world on fire. Wants to take Regulus somewhere far away where nothing can touch him. He wants to fix this. He knows he can't.
I'm not them.
There's another long pause before Regulus sighs, dropping his head.
I know. But sometimes I wish you were easier that way. This... I thought I could control it. I thought I could keep it here. Just us. But I can't.
James understands that. Oh, how he understands it. It's easier when it's just the two of them, without their friends and families, without politics. He watches Regulus's back and feels overwhelmed with all of the things he feels for him. Eventually, Regulus turns around. He looks resigned.
I'm not a very good person.
James opens his mouth to interrupt, but Regulus talks over him.
I'm not going to do the right thing here.
The right thing?
I'm not going to let you go, James. Not until you make me. Not until you tell me you don't want me. I never should have let this start. I should have told you to fuck off and been done with it. But, well...
He shrugs a little helplessly.
I'm not a very good person.
Somehow those words hurt and feel good all at the same time, tangling up inside of James like the rest of it.
I want you. I want you, Reg.
The other boy's eyes close briefly before he steps forward, slow, careful, and James lets him. Lets him bring them together again. Lets him hold his face, thumb brushing his lips. Lets him pull lightly on the back of his head, bringing their mouths together. It's not like it was before. It's careful, breakable. And James thinks this is what they mean when they say love is falling. Because he doesn't know where the floor is. Because he knows it's going to hurt when they hit the ground.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
James's cheeks are flushed from the fire whiskey.
Lily, it's a lost cause.
Remus sends her a sympathetic look.
Believe me, I've tried. It's like a cult.
All sports are cults, but at least Muggle ones don't have a ball worth 150 points that automatically ends the game.
She tilts the drink she's holding back into her mouth, fiery red hair piled in a messy bun on top of her head.
Or have a ball that's trying to kill you.
She gestures to him emphatically with her bottle.
Exactly!
It's the night before Christmas Halls and nearly all the Gryffindor upper years are sitting around the common room drinking.
Remus, I hope you know that you're breaking my heart.
The other boy rolls his eyes.
Oh, I'm sure you'll get over it.
Come on, James. You must see how mad it is. You nearly got beheaded in your last game.
That was Bones' fault, not Quidditch's. It was a bad play.
Hear, hear. Mary lifts her drink in the air.
I mean, it was kind of Quidditch's fault.
Due to the aforementioned murder balls.
Exactly. How did they not see it?
Cult. This is what I'm saying.
Oh, just get a room, you two. A no fun, boring room.
A safe, reasonable room.
Reasonable. Talk about a boner killer.
I don't think anyone was talking about boners, darling.
Weren't they? Shame that.
Remus looks very determinedly at the fireplace. It's been weeks, but James still catches them avoiding eye contact, or not standing too close. He hates it, but seeing as his last conversation with Sirius ended in more fighting, he's not exactly sure what to do about it.
Speaking of Quidditch cults...
Alice sends Frank a mischievous smile that has him blushing. They're sitting on the sofa with Mary, Lily, and Marlene leaning against their legs. The Marauders sprawled out on the floor in front of them.
This one's just got his first pro offer.
She punches his arm affectionately.
Hey, no way!
James sits up, surprised to only be hearing about this now.
That's brilliant.
Who's trying to snap you up, Frankie boy?
Ptolemy, believe it or not.
Frank gives them a shy smile, rubbing the back of his neck. Off the pitch, Frank is actually rather reserved. It always confounds James, especially since Alice is about the most extroverted person he knows, besides Sirius, of course.
No shit. That's mad.
You're going to get a season ticket, right?
James leans over to smack Frank's legs. The older boy rolls his eyes.
As if you need me to, Pollard. Doesn't your family have a private box at the stadium outside of London?
Yeah, they do. And let me tell you, the only thing better than watching Quidditch is watching Quidditch while drinking champagne and eating caviar.
James glares at him.
We don't eat caviar at Quidditch matches.
I'm sorry. Do you eat caviar at other times?
Come now, Evans.
Sirius pulls back his shoulders and tilts up his nose.
What do you expect us to eat? Fish fingers? Crisps? Our aristocratic constitution simply would not stand for it. No. Give me caviar or give me death.
James attempts to kick Sirius across the floor.
Give me caviar or give me death. I need that on a t-shirt.
Do you think you'll accept it then? The offer?
James turns back to Frank, hoping to change the subject. He's never felt particularly comfortable with his family's wealth. The older boy grimaces.
Actually, I've been thinking lately I might not play pro at all.
There's a beat of silence.
What?
Frank smiles, but it's a little half-hearted.
Is it the murder balls?
No, it's... With everything that's going on, I think I might be better off in the aura department, making a difference. If they'll have me, that is.
Oh, they'll have you.
Alice squeezes his arm.
You and me both.
You want to be an Auror?
If she's offended by the looks of surprise, she doesn't show it, flashing Peter a toothy grin.
Well, someone's got to protect you from the baddies, don't they?
An awkward silence drifts over the group, suddenly confronted with the world outside of Hogwarts. It's not that they don't know what's going on, because they do, as much as they can anyway. James sees the tense way his parents hold their smiles these days, the way they whisper behind their hands and close their doors. But it always feels distant somehow, something that is happening somewhere else to people he doesn't know. Frank and Alice, though? Frank and Alice are right here.
I have an idea.
Mary sits forward on the sofa, absent-mindedly running her fingers through Marlene's hair.
Why does that sound like a threat when you say it?
Couldn't tell you, dear. Now, what do you lot say to a round of spin the bottle?
Ugh. Ooh, yes. I am very into that.
I like the way your brain works, MacDonald.
Sirius earns a wink from Mary that has James wondering, not for the first time, how it is that they didn't make it work. The two of them are so bloody similar.
Oh, because that doesn't sound awkward at all.
James lifts his glass to him.
I agree with Mooney.
Why don't you just go join him and Evans in their reasonable boner-killing no-fun room then?
It's Sirius's turn to kick James, nearly spilling his drink.
Oi, watch it, you heathen.
Mary reaches over and ruffles Peter's hair.
What about you, Pete? What do you say?
She gives him a smile that James thinks is thoroughly unfair. Peter's cheeks go red.
Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? Could be fun.
James rolls his eyes.
Merlin, Peter.
Mary sits back, looking quite pleased with herself.
Excellent. That's the majority then, so we're playing.
First of all, no, it isn't. And second of all, I don't remember agreeing to be part of a democracy.
Mary turns her big brown eyes on him, batting her lashes in a way that makes even James's stomach swoop. But Remus only gives her a flat look.
Yeah, not gonna work on me, MacDonald.
Remus, I love you. I ever tell you that?
James is smiling.
Almost constantly, James. It's getting a bit much if I'm being honest.
Just waiting for the day you say it back, babe.
Sirius reaches his arm impatiently towards the sofa.
MacDonald, bottle?
James sends him a questioning look, but Sirius very determinedly ignores him. Mary reaches over to the coffee table beside her, grabbing one of her empties and passing it down to Sirius, who places it firmly in the middle of the carpet.
Your game, MacDonald. You start.
Don't mind if I do.
She leans over Marlene, giving the bottle a practiced twist. James feels warm as he looks out at his friends, all gathered in the holly-covered common room. Muggle Christmas lights that Mary insisted on hanging up, draped over the fireplace, casting everything in a rainbow glow.
Oh boy.
Sirius gives Peter a slap on the back as the bottle slows right in front of him. Peter's eyes grow to about twice their normal size, staring at the bottle like he's never seen one before.
I think he's going to combust.
Yeah, in his pants.
Merlin! James!
She reaches over and punches his arm, even though they're both laughing.
All right, Petey.
Mary is clearly enjoying the effect she's having on Peter.
Come here.
Oh no.
Marlene crawls out from between Mary's legs and moves towards Lily.
You are not kissing over top of me.
Mary rolls her eyes.
Peter?
Remus leans forward, waving his hand in front of Peter's face, which appears to be frozen, along with the rest of him.
I think we might have broken him.
Mary blows a strand of curly brown hair out of her face.
Oh, honestly.
She pushes off of the sofa, taking Peter's face very purposefully between her hands and bringing them together with an almost comical smack.
God's sake, Mary, don't hurt the boy.
Alice buries her face in Frank's shoulder. After several seconds, the two Gryffindors part, Peter's eyes somehow even wider.
Adequate.
Mary smiles and kisses the top of his head.
Thanks.
Peter is slightly dazed, and James doesn't have the heart to tell him that adequate is not exactly a compliment.
Aw, look at our widow Pete. He's a man now.
Sirius pinches his cheeks, and it's a testament to how blissed out Peter is that he doesn't even try to swat him away.
Okay, McKinnon.
Mary slides back into a spot on the sofa.
Your turn.
I can't help but feel I'll be a bit of a disappointment after that.
Marlene reaches for the bottle. It skids in a pathetic circle on the carpet, stopping rather inexactly between James and the empty armchair.
Is it a wash?
Lily looks around.
Nuh-uh.
Mary grins.
That's you, Potter.
In all honesty, if it had to be anyone, he's rather pleased it's Marlene. James places his drink down and raises an eyebrow at her, as if to say, shall we? With a laugh, she crawls across the circle to meet James halfway, her eyes bright and blue in the dim light of the room. It's a quick kiss, mouths closed, lips both sticky from the alcohol, but it's nice. Her hand holds his shoulder. James cups her face. It feels familiar. When they break apart, she smiles at him.
Adequate.
Please, McKinnon. I rocked your world.
She sticks her tongue out at him. He doesn't miss the very pointed looks that Sirius sends him. The "see, what did I tell you" looks. He does ignore them, though.
Remus, you're up.
Marlene passes the bottle to him as she leans back against the sofa, Mary's hand in her hair again.
I don't remember agreeing to this.
He takes the bottle with great trepidation.
Lupin?
Mary sends him a pointed stare.
Don't make me fight you, because I will.
Remus makes an exaggerated show of placing the bottle back in the middle of the floor.
I want it known that I'm only doing this because I 100% believe you.
Mary smiles.
Noted.
With the air of the long suffering, Remus spins the bottle. It hadn't quite occurred to James just how awkward this game could get. He had been against it, of course, very aware of the redhead sitting next to him and the history he didn't want to bring up with a kiss. Or of Sirius's maybe not so fake crush on Alice, who was currently sitting with her boyfriend, who was also their captain, and who might not appreciate the two of them snogging in front of him. But he hadn't considered what would happen if, say, Remus spun the bottle and it landed on...
Sirius!
The ensuing silence is deafening. Remus looks as though he wants the ground to swallow him whole, face suddenly pale as he stares very determinedly at his hands. Sirius gone rigid on the other side of Peter.
Respin?
Excuse me?
That is not how the game works, Frankfurt.
Yeah, that's not my name.
You can't just respin because you didn't get the person you wanted.
Honestly, no need to be weird about it. James would kiss Remus in a heartbeat, wouldn't you, Jamie?
James does his best not to choke, wishing very much to be left out of it.
Yeah.
He's not looking at anyone.
Sure. Course I would.
I mean, it is a bit...
James's heart clenches.
Bit what?
I just meant, you know...
We don't, actually.
James looks over at Lily, surprised and oddly relieved all at once.
What do you mean, Peter?
Peter's eyes widen as he realises the hole he's dug himself into.
No, I'm just saying it would be weird, you know, kiss a mate, that's all.
You kissed me. Didn't seem like you found it that weird.
No, I mean, yes, but that's different.
Different how?
Alice leans across Frank's lap towards Peter. Peter is sweating now, eyes darting to James for help but finding none.
Nope, never mind. Forget I said anything.
Well, okay then.
Mary looks back to Sirius and Remus, who have not moved or spoken since the bottle stopped spinning.
Let's go, boys.
There are a few more moments of stillness before Remus reaches jerkily for the bottle, hand shaking as he passes it off to Lily, who takes it with a startled expression on her face.
I'm not playing.
Remus is still not looking at anyone. Mary opens her mouth to object, but...
Okay, Evans, let's see what you've got.
Lily, thankfully, seems to catch on quickly, smiling and spinning the bottle without question, effectively silencing Mary when it lands on Frank.
Whoop whoop!
Alice's excitement helps to generally dissolve the tension. James can't quite get rid of the aching in his chest, though. Even while watching the spectacle that is Evans and Longbottom's kiss, he had at least thought that Remus... But if this is how they react just to the idea of kissing... James tries to cover up his grimace by taking a swig of his drink. He meets Marlene's gaze only once and finds exactly what he's expecting. Pity. The game never quite recovers its momentum, and after a few more spins the group breaks up, all yawns and sleepy goodnights, and promises to say goodbye tomorrow before the train. When James heads upstairs, Remus and Sirius are the only ones left in the common room. He debates whether or not he should stay, but decides against it. Maybe it'll help, the two of them being alone together, talking. Exhausted, he drags himself to their room, saying goodnight to Peter before drawing the curtains around his bed and waiting, all the while trying not to think about the sick look that had crossed Sirius's face, or Remus's for that matter, about how it would feel to have them look at him that way. Some weak part of him tries to find comfort in the fact that they don't have to know, but it doesn't work, because in the end he'll still know. And besides, he doesn't want it to be like this forever, to love always in the dark. After a while, he starts to hear Peter snore and pulls out the map. Regulus's name hovers in the astronomy tower, the sight making James smile even while his chest aches. His eyes travel next to his two friends still in the common room. He sighs, setting the map down and managing to stay still for a whole 10 minutes longer before he can't stand it anymore. He grabs the invisibility cloak, slipping the map into the waistband of his pants and carefully opening the door so as not to wake Peter. He's about halfway down the stairs when he hears Remus and Sirius. Not the words exactly, but the humming of the whispered voices. He slows his pace, making sure to be quiet. He's not exactly certain how he's planning to get through the portrait without them noticing, but he's hoping an opportunity will present itself.
I miss you.
James falters on the last step, the break in Sirius's voice making him freeze. They're still sitting in the same spots they were when he left, a good deal of distance between them. James can see Sirius's face, but Remus has his back to him.
Don't.
Remus leans forward, dropping his head into his hands.
It's just the truth, Remus.
Sirius's eyes are like bleeding wounds, and James is struck by the pain that seems to sit in the room. He'd known they were fighting, but he hadn't thought...
I don't know how to handle this.
Me? You mean?
No, I mean, Merlin, I don't... I can't,
His hand runs angrily through his hair.
I can't, Remus.
Right. Fine. You've said. I understand.
I doubt that.
Don't say that unless you're going to explain yourself.
Sorry, okay? Sorry.
Sirius grimaces but doesn't offer any further explanation, his words followed by more silence. James wonders how much talking they've actually done since he went upstairs. It doesn't feel like much.
I'm tired. I'm going to bed.
James quickly moves off the stairs and out of the way as he watches Remus get to his feet.
Wait. Moons, please, just...
Remus turns back, watching Sirius fight with himself.
You have to understand. You, James, Peter, you're the only things that matter to me in the whole world.
Remus nods stiffly.
I get it, Pads. We're just friends. I do understand.
No, that's...
Sirius gets to his feet too now, closing the distance between them but not touching.
You are important to me.
He looks right into Remus's eyes.
You are so important, and I'm scared I'm going to lose you. Scared I'm already losing you, and I can't handle that, Remus. I can't. It'll break me. I just don't know what to do here. What to do with whatever it is that's happened.
You kissed me. That's what happened.
James steps back, running right into the wall behind him and biting down on his lip so hard he draws blood just to keep himself quiet. Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit. Sirius looked like he's just been slapped, eyes going to the stairwell. At first, James is worried he's made some sort of noise.
No one can hear me, Sirius. They're all asleep.
Sirius keeps staring, though, as expecting someone to come after him. His mum, James realizes, recognizing that look. The fear that only Walburga can bring out in him.
Remus, please.
James isn't sure what he's begging for.
You told me not to say anything, and I won't.
But I didn't want... You won't even look at me.
James is well aware that he shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be hearing any of this. But he can't very well walk out of the portrait hall now, and he's pretty sure that if Sirius hears the door upstairs, he'll freak. Also, if he's being honest with himself, he wants to hear this.
Sirius. It's just... It's hard. That's all.
I know.
Remus reaches out but drops his hand before it gets to him, and he pinches the bridge of his nose.
I don't know what you want from me. You were so scared, and then it was like every time I came near you, I could feel that fear, and I hate the idea that I make you feel like that. So I just thought it'd be easier for you, for both of us, to stay away for a bit.
Sirius shakes his head, eyes big, looking so young it startles James.
I need you, Moony. I always need you. I know this is my fault, that I messed it all up.
That's not what this is about.
And James wonders if Sirius understands what that means, because he surely doesn't.
Then what's it about, Moony?
Remus shakes his head, turning away from Sirius and therefore towards James, which is strange. Strange to have him staring nearly straight at him with that heartbroken look on his face.
Why did you kiss me, Sirius?
The other boy looks lost.
I don't know.
Lie, James thinks, but he can't tell if Remus spots it as easily. Remus nods, resigned.
That's what this is about.
Several minutes pass in which Sirius opens and closes his mouth, but no sound makes it out. Eventually, Remus looks back at him, putting him out of his misery.
When you figure it out, let me know, yeah? Until then, you haven't lost me, I can't be there all the time. It's too hard.
I never wanted to make life harder for you.
Remus bites down on his lower lip. Sirius steps forward, but Remus waves him off.
I'm going to bed.
He doesn't wait for a reply before he blows past James and up the stairs. James watches Sirius sit alone on the sofa, head in his hands, for a long time. James bursts through the door to the astronomy tower.
I was beginning to give up on you.
Regulus is over by the railing, looking out at the view. The grounds are beautiful right now, blanketed in a snow that sparkles under the moonlight. Regulus's warming charm is barely able to keep the cold out.
Sorry. Thanks for waiting.
He steps closer, holding his hands out, desperate to touch him.
Can I?
Regulus looks at him curiously. James knows how he sounds. Heartbroken. It's how he feels.
Yes.
He pulls him in immediately, pressing Regulus's body against his own. Regulus lets him open his mouth, lets him inside, warm and desperate. Eventually they part, breathing heavy, Regulus's hands coming up to circle his wrists.
What is it?
He searches James's face.
What's happened?
James shakes his head, brushing their foreheads against one another.
I'm sorry for how I was. The first time you kissed me.
Regulus's eyes widen.
What? James, I was drunk and I pounced on you. I'm not sure I could have expected anything else. I certainly could have expected worse.
And James hates that. The image of Remus's face, Sirius's, invading his thoughts.
I'm still sorry. I know that must have felt.
But he doesn't have the words to finish that thought, so instead he leans forward and kisses him again, slow and sweet. They stay there, pressed together like that in comfortable silence, until eventually Regulus's hand comes up and tugs on his collar.
Come. I have something to show you.
James arches his brow as Regulus pulls away, moving towards the door.
You have something to show me?
Regulus nods, mistaking James's stillness for worry.
I doubt anyone will be around at this hour. Filch is usually asleep in his office by now, and the prefects will be long done with their rounds.
Wow, very knowledgeable about sneaking about after dark, aren't you?
James follows him into the stairwell, his eyes darting momentarily to the spot outside the door where he stashed the invisibility cloak. He'll just have to come back for it later.
Like I've said before, you and my brother are not the only ones who break the rules.
You'll have to excuse me if your perfectly coiffed hair and pressed trousers don't scream rebel.
They slip into the corridor, Regulus lighting his wand but keeping it low.
I'm sorry. I must have misplaced my leather jacket and boots.
And it's work for James to hold his laughter in. He has a vague idea of where they are in the castle, somewhere on the 7th floor. But after a few turns, it's easy to get lost, and he feels his hands itching to pull out the map.
Reg, where are you taking me?
Shh. You'll see.
James can't help but smile, feeling some of the weight in his chest lighten. They walk for another 10 minutes or so before Regulus stops in front of an empty wall.
Well, this is fascinating.
That earns him an elbow to the side.
Just wait.
Regulus steps forward and starts pacing back and forth in front of the wall, muttering to himself, which James has to admit is mildly concerning. He's about to step in when suddenly the wall trembles, lines distorting as the door pulls itself out of the stone.
Holy shit.
Regulus, who has stopped his pacing, shoots him a grin over his shoulder.
Shall we?
James's mouth is fully open, like some kind of cartoon character, looking from Regulus to the door and back again.
Reg, did you just magic a room into existence?
His grin widens.
Might have.
He pushes through the door, James stumbling after him. The room inside is warm. Actually, it reminds James a lot of Gryffindor common room. There's an ornate fireplace, dark oak walls covered in tapestries, comfortable-looking chairs and sofas everywhere. The one notable difference would be the bed. James walks into the centre, looking around. The ceiling, he notices, has been painted. He's seen murals like this in older wizarding homes, but never at Hogwarts. There are people he doesn't recognise, who don't move or appear to be wearing robes, and in the centre, a man holding a pale body.
What is this place?
James drops his gaze back down to Regulus, who has put his wand away and is currently leaning against the wall, looking smug.
The house elves call it the come-and-go room. It appears when someone needs it.
That...
James struggles to get his thoughts in order.
That's bloody brilliant.
He turns about himself again, taking it all in.
I figured it was getting a little cold for the tower. Besides, as long as we're in here, no one else can find us unless we want them to.
Those words drift through James's head as he walks forward, running his hands along the soft upholstery on the sofa. No one can find them.
The map. It's not on the map.
I hadn't known about it, so it's not plotted, which means that as long as they're here, the marauders won't be able to see them.
Map?
Oh. Right. James turns around to find Regulus looking at him curiously. He knows he could lie. It wouldn't be that hard. But he doesn't want to.
I have something to show you, too.
He pulls out the parchment from his waistband. Regulus raises his brow, stepping forward. He hands it over to Reg, who, if anything, looks even more confused.
James, this is just...
Wait.
He pulls out his wand and taps the centre.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
He always feels a little jolt of pleasure when the map springs to life, their finely penned names coming into focus before the panels fold out, revealing the castle. Honestly, It might be the most impressive thing they've ever done. For a moment, Regulus says nothing, staring down at the map in awe.
Is this showing the entire school?
Yes.
And everyone in it?
James grins.
Yes.
Regulus shakes his head.
Merlin, that's incredible.
James preens, feeling thoroughly pleased with himself.
You made this?
Rebus did most of the heavy lifting. Me and Sirius were mostly moral support.
Regulus squints at him before turning back to the map.
You're being modest. Your magic is all over this.
That surprises James.
You can feel my magic?
Regulus seems to realize what he's just admitted to. All magic has a signature, the touch of the individual core it comes from. But it's a hard thing to pick up on. Usually only your family, people who you've spent years with, are ever really able to do it. James can recognize his mum usually, but that's about it. It's a hard thing to explain, like touch and taste and smell all rolled into one.
What's it like?
James leans into Regulus a little more.
What's what like?
The other boy keeps his eyes very determinedly on the map in his hands.
My magic. What does it feel like to you?
Regulus is holding himself still, his face hidden by his dark curls. James can feel the tension in him, knows the younger boy is trying to decide whether to give in or push back. It's a process with Regulus. The walls don't come down all at once, but brick by brick.
Spring. You feel like spring.
James is gentle when he takes hold of Regulus's face, tilting it over his shoulder so that he can kiss him. At first it's innocent, shallow, but then the map is gone and Regulus's hands are in his hair, sliding down his arms.
Fuck.
Their foreheads are pressed together.
I don't know how I'm going to survive 2 weeks without this.
He's been trying not to think about it. Christmas break. Trying not to think about where Regulus will be.
You'll be okay.
He pulls back, hands coming to hold Regulus's face.
James, I've spent the last 14 years of my life in that house. Another holiday isn't going to make much difference.
But James can see the tension in the way he holds his mouth, the way his eyes cloud over.
I know you said not to write.
No.
James nods.
But if you need to, you can come to me, okay?
He tries to make those words as solid as he can, tries to give them to Regulus, something to hold on to.
Letter, blue, show up on my doorstep. I don't care.
Regulus pulls out of his grip but doesn't go too far.
I'm sure that would go over well with my brother.
He'll get over it.
James acts as though it isn't something he spent the past few months agonizing over. Regulus doesn't need to know that, though. He just needs to know that he has somewhere to go.
You understand? I don't care about secrets or what people think. If you need to, you come find me, okay? Or even if you just want to.
Regulus looks back at him, grey eyes searching. Though for what, James doesn't know. Regardless, he tries to lay himself open, tries to let himself be known. He told Regulus he could take what he wanted and he meant it. I won't hurt you, he wants to say. I promise. Finally, Regulus steps close again, bringing their mouths together. The kiss is slow, his teeth pulling on James's lower lip before he starts nudging him backwards. It takes James a moment to realize where they're going.
Regulus.
The bed is here for a reason, Potter.
The back of James's legs collide with the mattress.
Doesn't mean we have to do anything.
James already feels breathless.
You've made that abundantly clear.
Regulus straddles James's hips, hand on his chest, pushing him down. He pauses then, hovering above him, sending shivers through James's whole body.
I'm saying yes, James.
His fingers play with the collar of James's shirt, and James feels his breath hitch.
But I have rules.
Okay.
Regulus is on top of him. In bed. His brain can barely cope.
Whatever you want.
Don't touch me.
James's hands instantly drop away from where they've been gripping Regulus's waist. The younger boy rolls his eyes.
Not like that, I mean...
It takes James far too long.
Oh. Okay, of course.
Yes?
James nods.
Yes, Regulus. Yes.
And then the kissing again. Regulus is everywhere. His hands, his mouth, his voice. He slides James's shirt off with ease, trailing open-mouthed kisses down his neck, his shoulders, his chest. James hears a high whining noise and realizes too late that it's coming from his own mouth.
I like you like this. Under my hands.
Regulus's voice does things to James that he wasn't expecting.
Whatever you want, Reg.
His brain is unable to explain itself more than that. Because he likes it too. Maybe more than he should. He likes being touched, being held, being cared for. When Regulus's fingers skate across his skin, he feels real. They feel real. The two of them, here, together. They feel like something James can keep. Regulus bites lightly into the skin above James's hip before flicking his trousers open and shimmying them off of him. James blinks up at the younger boy, who pauses now, just watching. He brings his hand to hold Regulus's face, and Regulus leans into the touch, turning to kiss the inside of James's palm. An affection so strong he thinks it might pull the heart from his chest runs through James.
Okay.
Regulus nods.
Yeah, James. Yeah, it's good. You're so good.
He takes James's mouth before he can answer, and James isn't sure if it's the words or the kiss that make him moan. Probably both. Regulus takes him apart. Slower and softer than James expects. Not that he has much experience to go on. He keeps his own touches confined to Regulus's upper body, keeps them over his clothes, never pushing, never wanting to. Regulus has him in his hand, and then he takes him in his mouth, and James just about dies.
Reg. Oh, fuck. Fuck, Reg, I'm going to...
Regulus doesn't move. Everything blurs together after that, touch and sound and sight. His chest hitching as he tries to breathe through it.
Oh, Christ.
He blinks his eyes open, his body full of pins and needles as Regulus sits up, wiping his mouth on the back of his hand.
Come here.
James reaches for him. Regulus pauses before allowing himself to be pulled into James's arms. They lie facing each other, James kissing him, unwilling to lose the weight of him, the heat. Regulus pulls back slightly.
I need a minute.
James instantly lets go, watching Regulus roll onto his back, chest heaving, trousers tented.
You're sure you don't want...
Regulus shakes his head, a sharp motion, and James lets it go, mirroring Regulus's position on his back, looking up the ceiling above them. He can feel the sweat cooling on his skin.
Who are they?
Who?
James lifts his arm, pointing at the painting on the ceiling before looking over at Reg.
The room made itself for you, right?
Regulus nods slowly, eyes running over the different painted figures, chewing on his bottom lip.
It's a Muggle painting. My favourite.
James is still looking at him, drinking in his profile. The ridge of his nose, the valleys of his cheeks.
You know a lot about Muggle art.
Regulus shrugs.
We have a summer home in Scotland. I used to sneak out sometimes. Go into the city. Go to the galleries.
Only you would break the rules so you could go to a museum.
Excuse me for being cultured.
James can tell he isn't really annoyed.
So?
James grins a little.
Who are they?
That's Achilles.
Regulus points to the blonde man who seems to be rather dramatically pushing everyone away.
And that's Patroclus.
He points to the pale body in his arms.
He's dead, yeah? What's his face?
Regulus smiles a little.
Patroclus. And yes, he's dead.
That sits between them as they both look up, James taking in the heartbroken expressions on the painted faces.
They were lovers. Knew each other their whole lives. Fought beside each other. They were inseparable.
What happened?
James feels a new twinge in his stomach at the image floating above them.
Patroclus decided to do something stupid and noble. Got himself killed. It destroyed Achilles. Basically lost his mind after that. He refused to bury him at first. And when he finally let them burn the body, he made his men promise that when he died they would mix his ashes with Patroclus's, so that they could be together.
Jeez, Reg. That's like the most depressing story I've ever heard.
His laugh curls around James, making him warm.
It's... yeah, a bit. But I don't know. They loved each other. They loved each other more than anything else in the world. More than power, more than glory, more than winning the war. I've never seen that in real life. Never seen people love like nothing else matters. It aches, but in a good way, you know?
Finally, Regulus turns his head to look at him, and James feels his chest swell.
Yeah.
He reaches forward to tuck a dark curl behind Regulus's ear.
Yeah, I know.
Regulus rolls onto his side and they're kissing again, softly, slowly, without a purpose. James runs his hand up Regulus's back, cupping his head.
I think he was a wizard.
Who?
Achilles. In the Muggle story, his mother is a nymph, and she hates Patroclus because he's only human, and she wants her son to be with a god.
James can see how Regulus might relate to that. A mother obsessed with status.
But Achilles doesn't care. He never gives Patroclus up. Not even at the end. Not even in death.
Reg brings his hand to James's face, thumb brushing his cheek.
You think the gods were wizards?
Regulus shrugs.
Some of them, maybe.
And Achilles fell in love with a muggle.
Regulus kisses him again.
It's just a theory.
But it doesn't sound like it's just anything to Regulus. They stay like that, tangled up in one another, sometimes talking, sometimes not. James has never felt this before. This profound comfort. He kisses Regulus until he's soft and warm. He kisses him until his edges start to dull, until he nestles his head against James's chest. I love you, James thinks. Nearly says out loud. Except he knows it's too soon. Knows it'll bring the fear back to Regulus's body. So he holds his tongue. But he thinks it. Thinks it into every stroke of his back, every kiss on top of his head. I love you. I love you. I love you.
James? James?
He cracks his eyes open just enough to see Regulus's face on the pillow next to him. He leans forward automatically, sleepily, pressing their mouths together.
Merlin James.
James likes that, so he keeps kissing, kisses the laughter right out of his mouth.
We fell asleep.
James is barely paying attention. Regulus's body is sleep-warm and inviting, and his hands swallow it up.
James, it's 7 a.m.
It takes a minute for that to sink in. And then...
Oh, shit.
He practically falls off the bed, scrounging around on the floor for his clothes.
Shit.
He hops around the room, pulling up his trousers.
Sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep.
You do not apologize for a single thing that happened last night.
James twirls about himself as he speaks, looking for his shirt.
You were bloody fantastic. I'm just an idiot. Aha!
He snatches the shirt up off the floor by the foot of the bed, awkwardly shoving it over his head. When his face pokes through the collar, he gets a look at Regulus properly for the first time, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the mattress, shirt untucked, curls a mess.
Oh, Merlin, look at you.
Regulus quirks his brow.
Look at me.
But James is already crawling towards him, kissing him again, and it's really all a very vicious cycle.
You're beautiful.
Regulus pushes him away, eyes bright and cheeks flushed.
Go, you lunatic. Before my brother sends out a fucking search party for you.
Ugh.
James pulls himself back off the bed.
Good point.
He grabs his wand and shoves the map in his waistband.
Alright, I guess.
He gets as far as the door before looking back. Regulus still where he left him.
You're okay.
And he means so much. He means all of it. About everything.
Yeah, James. Yeah, I'm okay. I might even be happy. If you can believe it.
James feels his face ache with the size of the smile that spreads across it.
Merry Christmas, Regulus.
Merry Christmas, James.
I love you. I love you. I love you. He's halfway back to the dorms when he remembers that he left the invisibility cloak stashed up in the astronomy tower. By the time he runs up to get it and comes back, the morning is well on its way. If he had been thinking, he would have used the cloak. It would have made sneaking up to his room without attracting any attention a trifle easier. But he isn't thinking. So when the portrait swings open and he darts inside, he, of course, finds himself face to face with Sirius.
Oh.
They both freeze, looking at one another. Sirius has deep purple circles under his eyes, hair less of an artful mess than it usually is and more just a general disaster.
Long walk?
Yeah.
Sirius gives him a once-over before brushing past.
The shower should be free. Mooney just finished.
Right, thanks.
James wants to say more, so much more, but he doesn't even know where to start.
Oh, and James?
He turns around, Sirius halfway out of the portrait already.
Your shirt's inside out.
James blinks, looks down at himself, blinks again.
Shit,
But Sirius is gone.
Shit.
For some reason, he feels the need to right this wrong immediately, and pulling his shirt over his head. He's halfway through putting it back on when he looks up to see Alice, Marlene, and Lily walking down the stairs into the common room.
Take it off, Potter!
Ha ha ha.
James yanks the shirt over his head.
Going our way?
She nods towards the corridor. James shakes his head.
Nah, I got a shower still.
Aren't those the clothes you were wearing last night?
Marlene stares, wrinkling her nose.
Yeah?
James feels like he's literally vibrating with all the adrenaline pumping through him.
Couldn't sleep, went for a walk, just got back, now I'm gonna take a shower. That okay with you, McKinnon?
Merlin, Potter, take a breath once in a while.
Alice looks over her shoulder.
Lily? Dear, something wrong?
Lily seems to have momentarily stalled on the stairs, eyes staring dazedly at James.
Evans?
Alice leans into James's side.
I think your little show may have entranced her.
That seems to wake Lily up.
What? Let's go. Where are we going?
She makes a beeline for the portrait, freckled cheeks flushed and eyes determinedly not on James. Lily starts dragging Marlene away by the arm.
Well, guess we're suddenly in a rush.
She knocks James's shoulder.
I'll see you before London, yeah?
Yeah.
James watches the girls file out of the portrait, feeling not at all certain that he knows what just happened. He scoops the cloak up off the floor in a daze, taking the stairs 2 at a time up to the bedroom. Peter and Remus are in the room when he enters.
Merlin Prongs, where the hell have you been?
James collapses onto his bed.
Out. Walk.
He waves his hand lazily in the air.
You sound like you're still drunk.
James doesn't bother to correct him, his eyes drifting closed. He hears the sound of the door opening and closing as Peter heads down to breakfast. I might even be happy. Regulus had said that. Had said that because of James. He replays the memory a few more times, Regulus messy and soft and laughing. He feels like floating.
James?
He opens his eyes to find Remus hovering over him, hair wet from the shower, expression concerned.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, Mooney.
He pulls himself up, scrubbing at his face.
There any hot water left?
Remus grimaces.
Some. I'd give it a minute. You know how Proudfoot is. Bloody boils himself.
He waits, watching Remus fold up his pyjamas and fit them in his luggage.
You excited to go home?
Remus shrugs, pausing for a minute before straightening up.
I'm excited there's no full moon over break.
He offers James a weak smile.
You know, if there was, I'd make you come to mine.
Because it's true. They've done it before. Remus nods.
Yeah, I know, James.
Good. You'll come over anyway, yeah? For New Year's Eve. Pete's coming too.
His face looks tight and he starts fiddling with his luggage again.
I don't know. I might stay with my mum. She gets lonely.
James's eyes narrow.
Remus?
They both know that that isn't true. Remus's parents are alright. They know Wahlberger. But James knows Remus hates that house. The delicacy of it. The guilt that his parents have never been able to let go of. The realities they never seem to accept.
I think Sirius might not want me there. That's all. It's not a big deal.
James swings his legs off the bed, walking over to Remus's side.
He wants you there.
James.
I know you're fighting, but I also know Sirius. I know he wants you there. And I know I want you there. And Peter wants you there. And my mother really wants you there. Between you and I, you've always been her favourite. But don't tell Padfoot I said that.
Cross my heart.
Remus makes the motion with his fingers, and James smiles.
So really, the only thing that matters is whether or not you want to be there.
There's a pause. Remus pulling his lower lip anxiously between his teeth, not really looking at James.
I do. Course I do.
Good man.
James slaps him on the shoulder.
It's settled then.
He tosses the map and his wand onto his bed before moving towards the thoroughly debauched-looking bathroom.
James.
James turns around just as he reaches the door.
Thank you.
James nods, wishing he could say more, but not at all sure how to say any of it without making things worse.
You're not alone, Remus, okay?
Remus nods.
Okay.
And James wonders if one day he'll actually be able to convince all the people he loves that it's true.